Hello, my beautiful blossoms, blooms, and buds. I'm Rosebud Reads, and welcome to my book garden. Welcome also to Copper Coins Book 2, Part 5. So, this is actually the last part of Book 5. And we will start Book 3, our final book in the series, on Thursday. But anyway, welcome! This is You're gonna be like that and not focus on me. It's a little too low. Okay, there we go. Hello, Embers. Welcome. How are you doing tonight? Hello, Annika. Welcome, welcome. So as I was saying before I got distracted, hello, little potato. Yes. This is a chill stream. What that means is I will be talking to myself. I will be talking to my lovely book garden, as you will see. Occasionally I might look something up, either a picture of what's being described, or if I'm want a little bit of elaboration on a description, I might look up that. So that's not always everyone's cup of tea, which is totally understandable. But maybe stick around, you might be surprised and find you enjoy it. So, you never know. If not, totally okay, no hard feelings. In the same vein, this is a mature stream, which means there potentially will be gore, violence, potentially triggering things, which if you're watching this later, you might have a little more of a heads up, because if something triggering does occur, and I view it as triggering, I will put a warning in the title. There will be a short description / warning in the description, and there will be a timestamp for the start and the finish of when that event happens. If you're here during the live, there's only so much I can do. I am pretty good about picking up on cues when something's about to go down, but occasionally it happens. And it's kind of one of those watch at your own risks for the lives. And if you feel like something's coming that might trigger you, it's more than okay to come back and watch later, or just like read the description for that video. Like, take care of yourself. This is a good time. We're here to chill, hang out, and enjoy these books. So take care of yourself and your mental health, and totally do what you need to do. And hello, Ruby. I hope you are doing well today. Hello, Truffle. Welcome, welcome. But yes, I am not sponsored. I do this because I can. The only things that I do own are the physical copies in front of you and my time, and sometimes not even that. If I ever do get sponsored by anything, you all will be the first to know. But that probably will not happen for a long time, if ever. But yes, I am also not fluent in Chinese, or when we're reading the occasional Korean story, Korean. I do my best, but you will notice, especially for names and places, there will be some interesting things happening, but I will do my best. And if I am completely slaughtering something linguistically, please let me know so I can correct it. Just be kind of nice about it. I am doing my best. But yes. That's about it. Oh, a couple things. This is past the logistics of just the episode, but this week will be completely normal. We'll be streaming Thursday, starting book 3. Next week, let me just double check that this is the correct week I'm talking about. But next week we'll have a bit of a funky schedule. We'll still be doing 2 episodes. But it will just be Monday and Tuesday. I will actually be out of town the rest of that week. I'll be back normal Tuesday, Thursday, the week after, but for It'll be the 3rd and the 4th that I'll stream next week. I'll make a note of that in the little posts as well after this, but just wanted to let everyone know it'll be the same time as always, 8 o'clock Central Standard Time. But yes. Thank you. It was very spontaneous, but since I have the time right now, I'm gonna be visiting my brother. He actually broke his foot and was unable to go on his vacation, so he was like, "What you doing?" And I was like, what you doing?" So I'm gonna go see my brother and help him out a bit. But yeah, it'll be nice. It's always fun to hang out with that brother. So just a chill time, but it will cut into recording times because he does not have a setup at all, let alone one as cool as mine. So I wanted to at least get the recordings in because we were so close to the end. But yeah. Yeah. No, he's a trooper about it. He's doing his best, but like he also has dogs. I was like, yeah, I can come and help you out. Yeah. Um, but anyway, I have something fun for us to do before we start reading. So I actually need all of your help because we did get our results in from the survey about do we want a longer post or shorter for our next book, and shorter won by quite a landslide. 80% of you guys wanted a shorter series. So we have a number of options, which I will be presenting and kind of slimming down because unfortunately for polls, YouTube only allows 4 slots. And I have a lot more than 4 options in front of me. So I have broken them into 2 categories where it's the single series, like single book series, and then the 3 book series. So for our single book series, really? It seems weird. I can double check again, but for no, the shorter series 1 to 3 books total is 80%. There are 15 votes. Oh, you mean the only 4 slots? Yes. I was a bit disappointed, but this just means we get to go through some of the options now. No, I picked up on it after as soon as I said it. I was like, "Wait, no, YouTube. YouTube's being weird." So we have I thought I'd throw this one in. No one recommended this one, but Astrolabe Rebirth, which is who controls the power of rebirth? In the fractured world of the Astrolabe, where humans are but shadows of their former selves, the city of Steel is ruled by androids and their man-made deity, Father. Humanity lives on the brink of annihilation, and Akka, a young slave shackled by oppression, clings to a fragile hope of escaping to a legendary land across the sea. When Akka crosses paths with Heishi, a mysterious raven haired man awakened after thousands of years, his life is upended. Bound by destiny and an unspoken connection, the two become unlikely allies as they're swept into a cataclysmic war between clones and androids. An ancient prophecy As ancient prophecies unravel, the fragile bond between Akka and Heishi may hold the key to salvation or doom. What in the Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood? Okay, so this is option 1 for the single book series. Here's option 2, Song of the River's Heart. Kind of talked about this one a little bit last time. It's tough being overworked all the time, but that has to be better than dying, right? After a bizarre accident, Feng Yan awakens in the mysterious fantasy world of the popular gacha game Peak Sword Story as the healer of the Jian Hua sect Fang Ming Yuan. Guided by an enigmatic system and haunted by his disappointing life, he hopes he can survive as the inconsequential background character to the hero's story. But as he navigates a realm recovering from a devastating demon war, he faces a deadly assassination plot from heaven and the haunting legacy of a vanished demon prince. As tensions mount and secrets unfold, Feng Ming Yuan struggles to accept the growing feelings he has for his favorite character, a man whose hold on his heart feels as if it inexplicably stretches across time. But hey, it's perfectly normal to be a little obsessed with the gotcha's handsome and mysterious lead character, isn't it? In a world where love endures reincarnation and chaos threatens to remake the realms, will Fang Ming Yuan find the courage to embrace his heart and his future? So this one definitely gives Scumvillain vibes, which like I don't hate at all. It seems like it'd be a pretty fun read. Continuing along, we're throwing in some Yuri. The Beauty's Blade. So, a duel of swords and hearts. Brash, brilliant, and beautiful, Fu Wanqing is an unconventional choice to inherit leadership of the most prestigious martial sect. Known for her fiery temper and formidable swordplay, there's only one person she considers a worthy rival. The enigmatic woman who leads the demonic sect, Yu Shengyan. Eager to prove herself, Fu Wanqing challenges Yu Shengyan to a duel, but Yu Shengyan has no interest in such theatrics until Fu Wanqing offers something she can't ignore, a rare medicine that might save one of her own. The price? She must stay by Fu Wanqing's side for 3 months. What begins as a strategic maneuver soon evolves into something more perilous, as rivalry gives way to unexpected intimacy. Fu Wenqing sought a duel, but is she prepared to fall in love? Yes, this is from Seven Seas. So Yuri, also single, but look at how fierce and beautiful. Let's go lesbians. And then here's one of the ones we were talking about last time. Oh, I like gremlins. You know I do. Stratagem of Fated Winds. So this one is, they were meant to pacify the nation together. A warlord's son, scorned for his humble origins. A villain's heir, jaded by unearned thrones. When Sun Si and Shou Yu crossed blades beneath the pear tree, time begins to bend. Then Sun Si dies. His spirit lingers, bound to a sword and a promise unkept. But Shou Yu is not yet finished. Not while memory burns brighter than the fires of red cliffs. As he shatters his soul to rewrite the fate that doomed them both, Sun Si, caught between regret and longing, reaches for him from the far shores of death. Amidst the war-torn ruins of an alternate 2nd century China, grief unravels ambition, and love, in the end, redeems all. Okay. So these are the 4 single book choices. So keep these in mind. Part of me is like, I feel like I should take 2 series from the single books and like 2 series from the longer ones, which I'm about to get to. And then we'll go from there. You guys get to help me pick because you're here. So you get the extra privilege there. So I believe it was you, Truffle, that mentioned Guardian as an option, which I am willing to buy the series if it becomes something people are interested in. So here is the summary. Xiao Yunlan heads up a covert division of the Ministry of Public Security that deals with the strange and unusual, blurring the line between the mortal realm and the netherworld. His cocky, casual attitude conceals both a sharp mind and an arsenal of mystical tools and arcane knowledge. While investigating a gruesome death at a local university, Xiao Yulan crosses paths with the reserved Professor Shen Wei. Xiao Yulan is immediately intrigued by Shen Wei's good looks and intense gaze, and the attraction between them is immediate and powerful, even as Shen Wei tries to keep his distance. Shen Wei and his secrets are a puzzle Xiao Yulan feels compelled to solve as mysterious circumstances throw them together, and their connection becomes impossible to deny. This trilogy of supernatural novels from China, built around the desire between two men, Danmei, has been translated into multiple languages and inspired the blockbuster live-action series of the same name, penned by hit maker author Priest, whose works include Stars of Chaos, Sha Po Lang, and Faraway Wanderer's Word of Honor. The Seven Seas English language editions include exclusive all-new covers and interior illustrations. Okay. So that's a fun one, though. Xiao Lun gives Feng Xiao a run for his money and shamelessness. Oh, we do love the shameless male leads of the snake lady and the hapless newbie. Okay, so this is an option. I am willing to buy the books if that gets picked as one of our choices. Next, we have The Wife Comes First. So, he lost him once, he won't let it happen again. On the brink of death, Prince Chang is stunned to find the one person still by his side. His long-neglected princely consort, Mu Han Shang. While Prince Chang pursued power and countless lovers, Mu Han Shang never wavered in his dedication as his wife, despite the future he lost. Prince Chang knows he never deserved such loyalty. But fate isn't finished with him yet. When he awakens in the past, on the morning after their disastrous wedding night, with all his memories intact, Prince Chang seizes the chance to set things right. This time, he'll treasure Mu Hong Shang. This time, the wife will come first, the state second, and the husband last. Yet winning Mu Hong Shang's trust is only the first battle. Court conspiracies still run deep, and if they're not careful, history may repeat itself, starting with a knife in the back. So I've actually read some of this, and it's pretty good. I enjoyed this greatly. I have not finished the series. Life got in the way, but I did enjoy this. It's pretty good. Kind of just a funsy one, like not super complicated. Kind of more of an intrigue book, like not super romance based. It's kind of more just storytelling, very light. But it's one day, 29-year-old accountant Seichiro Kondo is accidentally transported to another world. As compensation, the Rumani kingdom promises to take care of all his living expenses, but the workaholic Seichiro still asks for a job. Once he's placed in the royal accounting department, he starts whipping his lackadaisical colleagues into shape. But when he gets in over his head and nearly dies from overwork, the handsome commander Aresh steps in to save him, and the two develop a unique physical relationship as a form of medical treatment. So that's an option. I got two more, and then we'll start eliminating. I don't know how we're going to start eliminating. I guess each of you kind of write your top two options from these choices. Like I'll hold or no, I could do tallies. I have post-its. You'll get 3 votes. And I'll tally who wins. I don't know. I didn't really plan this past like help. I need help figuring out which ones I put on the list. All right, next is the White Cat's Divine Scratching Post. What once strayed may yet return. In his former life, Mo Tian Liao was a feared demonic cultivator renowned for forging spiritual weapons of devastating power. But just as he was about to complete a weapon capable of destroying the world, the righteous sects banded together to take him down. Before his death, he managed one final act of devotion, saving his beloved white kitten. 400 years later, Mo Tian Liao awakens in the body of a divine tree, alive but stripped of spiritual power. To survive in this new era, he must start over from scratch by joining a righteous sect as a humble disciple. His new master, Qing Tong, a man of ethereal beauty and unmistakably feline mannerisms. And the more time Mo Tian Liao spends with him, the more he begins to suspect that this aloof, elegant cultivator is not the stranger he pretends to be. Another fun series. I definitely think the author had a rabbit at some point because the rabbit disciple is a destructo bun. All right, and here's the last option. The Villain's White Halo. So I've read parts of the series. Again, I have not finished the series, but I have enjoyed what parts I have read. It's pretty funny. He wanted to be feared. Instead, he's adored. Yin Bai Yu feels scammed. After dying as a 2-bit villain in a multitude of worlds, he dreamed of becoming the final boss in the next world he's reborn into. Unfortunately, the malevolent fiend Halo he purchased from the Rebirth Company seems to be malfunctioning. Instead of inspiring fear in those who inhabit his new reality, his fellow cultivators see him as a do-gooder. And this includes the bleeding heart protagonist, Luo Mingchuan, the very man who Yin Bai Yue just tried to murder. Before Yin Bai Yue knows it, he's surrounded by allies in the fallout of a misunderstanding that makes everyone in his cultivation sect think he's the victim. How is he supposed to achieve his dastardly dreams now? Especially when the mysteries of his forgotten past keep popping up when he least expects them. All right. So let me get some post-its. We're going to separate these into 4 just so I can save some paper. Okay. So I'm saying you guys get 3 votes for books. You know what? We'll do 4. We'll do 4 votes because there are 4 spaces. I will kind of flash. Okay, so here's one option. I'm going to go through them again real quickly. White cat. Here's another option. Bean counter. Wife comes first. Guardian. Focus. Guardian. Stratagem of Fated Winds. Astrolabe Rebirth. Song of the River's Heart. And Beauty's Blade. Okay. They are, though. I was in a rabbit group on Facebook, and you would not believe what they destroy. I believe it. Those teeth can cut through a lot. All right. Let's just go backwards through the pile. Who wants Beauty's Blade? Remember, you have 4 votes out of the pile. Camera? What about my camera? Is something happening with my camera? Is it not working? Okay. Any votes for Beauty Blade? Okay. I'm gonna put this one to the side. Now remember, we can always come back to they. You'd rank it out of 4? Okay, so that's a definite maybe. Okay. Song of the River's Heart. So this one was the one that's kind of scum villain-esque. Okay, you have 1 vote for song. Okay. All right. Okay. All right, we got 2 votes. Okay. Astrolabe Rebirth. Is my camera being weird? I don't see any errors on my screen, so okay. 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 All right. Any votes for this one? I know this one's kind of quirky. Okay. We'll put that as a maybe. If you want it, just let me know. Stratagem of Fated Winds. Okay. Got a vote for that one. Right. Put that over there. Okay, 2 for stratagem. Okay. Next, we move on to our longer series. We have Guardian. I'm on camera. Not even showing my face. Guardian. You get the idea. So this is a priest book. So that's the same author as No, that's Meat Bun. I was about to say the wrong person. No. But yeah. There we go. I knew it would focus eventually. But yeah. All right. Okay. Next. It's very definitely not Meat Bun. Yes, it's priest. All right. Wife comes first. All right. We have 1 definite wife comes first. 2 for wife comes first. Okay. Silent reading is priest. That's it. Okay. Okay. All right, so we have 2 for that one. All right. Bean counter. Also Stars of Chaos. That's true. Oh, you want a bean counter? Okay. Nice. That's fair. All right. White Cat's Divine Scratching Post. Okay. Okay, we have 2 for White Cat. Okay, 3 for White Cat. Okay, 4 for White Cat. All right, White Cat is definitely making it in. Oh, 5. All right. 6. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, 5. I can't count. All right, and last but not least, the villain's white halo. All right. 1. Okay. So, all right, I think that helps a lot. I mean, I think I have a little glimpse of what we're probably reading next, based on these. But from this, okay. So Villain's Halo. So these 2 are current winners, but I am gonna put up our other runner-ups, which are River Song and Stratagem, which works out perfectly because these are series, single series, and then these are our 3-book series. So these will be our choices to pick from. I will post the poll tonight. So go ahead and vote. I'll check it in a week. And I will let everyone know what the choice is. I mean, it's been made pretty clear what the fan favorite is. But yeah, thank you so much for helping me pick. That as you could tell from the pile, I was like, oh boy. But all right, these will be our picks. That was kind of fun. I know it took a little bit of the time from our reading or before we started, but I thought this was pretty fun. Yes. I kind of wanted you guys to be part of it and just instead of just picking a couple random series, like makes it more fun and then we all enjoy it more. But yes. Okay. Oh, you'll have to tell us how it is, Ruby. What time are we starting? Should read it right after Dinghai Fusheng. Nice. So good. Good. Okay. I have all the Guardian volumes and have yet to start the first one. Okay. All right. So we are starting. Sometimes the TV adaptations are a little hard to get into. I absolutely adore The Untamed and Modao Zushi, but you have to admit the first episode of The Untamed, first like 2-3 episodes, they're a little rough. Like, it's a little rough in the beginning. It's a bit hokey and such. Welcome, Esper Lady. We just actually we haven't started yet, surprisingly. We just did a poll, well, a vote for which books will we be doing next, because we decided on short series that won in the poll. So we now have our 4 series to vote from. We also found out everybody here is a cat person. But yes. So White Cat's Divine Scratching Post, Villain's White Halo, Stratagem of Fated Winds, and Song of River's Heart. Well, I'm glad they like my shrine. Here, I'll let them see my shrine a little clearer. So, there's my boys. But yes. I have to lower the screen because otherwise it focuses on their adorable faces rather than mine. And yeah, next time for Beauty's Blade. Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. Well, there's always next time. Yes. But anyway, we are literally just getting started now. Since you are here, there is a change for next week's schedule. I'll be streaming Monday and Tuesday. I'm going to be visiting my brother. He broke his foot. So, I moved up the schedule because we're so close to the end of the book that I don't want to skip any more episodes, especially since I just took some vacation time previously. But yeah, no, he's managing, but he also has dogs. So I was like, when are you free? I can come help. So, but yeah, so I didn't want to leave everyone high and dry. So we're just gonna squeeze it in early in the week, and I'll see you the week after. But yes, we'll finish the book, I believe, the week after, or somewhere very close to it. But yes. There are 3 books, so we are past halfway for Copper Coins because we actually finish we finished book 2 tonight. But yeah. Tried a new dish today. Buddha jumps over the Hey, that's a hard dish to make, I've heard. But yeah. No, I know. We're having so much fun. And it went by fast, I'll tell you that. But yes. Okay. Let's see. Last time we were in the village and found another of Shushian's bones, which we found out were keeping the ghosts in the town. Is getting everything to cook together and making sure the noodles don't dry out. Very cool. I actually made tofu for the first time this weekend. I think I've tried to make it once before, but this time I was actually successful. So I will probably be eating a lot more tofu from now on. Mung bean noodles are finicky. Yeah. I kind of comboed some recipes that I had seen to take the pieces I liked and go from there, and it worked. So I was like, yay. Okay. So, we had Shushian find his bone. They went back to the village. The ghost celebration disperses. The ghosts leave. But yes. Xuan Min kind of had another episode where he zones out and the spider-like mark that be on his mole yum, kind of had another outbreak. We also had Shushian licking Xuanmen's hand, which turned into a bit of a problem because we found out dragon saliva is an aphrodisiac along with being a healing aid. So that is what caused our lovely, lovely image over here. Right before we ended, where they're sweating. I believe he's in the bath. So, yeah. All right. Oh man, I forgot to write down when we started. I think it was like 35. 35. We're just going to say 35. Yeah. Oh, you didn't see that one, Amber? Oh, yeah. Okay. So, after some thought, Shushian broke in. May I ask you a question? Feng Cheng, the account book in hand, paused. They just turned the room into a sauna. Okay. I couldn't remember. Of course. Ask away. I'll answer to the best of my knowledge. Unlike Jiang Xining, Feng Cheng didn't know Shushian's true identity. Thus, he didn't need to worry about saving face when asking this question. Have you heard about dragon saliva? What are its effects? And if used on an ordinary person, are there any harmful consequences? I've certainly heard about it, Feng Cheng said with a blink, but I've never encountered it myself. Its effects, they're all just rumors. What do the rumors say? Feng Cheng wasn't much of a storyteller, so his answer was very matter of fact. Well, she'll become pregnant and give birth. This was quite the mess. There are also some other modern rumors, Feng Cheng continued. They say that in a certain place, someone was fortunate enough to obtain some and sell it for effective for curing diseases and detoxification. It has some other effects, mostly related to nourishing yin, invigorating yang, and enhancing certain pleasures. They say the effect lasts for quite a while, but it's just rumors. If I could see such a miraculous medicine that heals, cures, and detoxifies in my lifetime, I'd die without regrets. Having dealt with various medicinal ingredients for so long, Feng Cheng spoke about these effects with complete seriousness, devoid of any lewd implications. But still, though Shushian had guessed as much the previous night, hearing it spelled out by someone else was another feeling altogether. Is it cutting off? All right, fine. Let's make a deal. How about I switch rooms with you tonight? Oh, so without a word, he went to the courtyard and grabbed Jiang Xining. Let's make a deal. How about I switch rooms with you tonight? No, Jiang Xining said. Staying in the same room as the master for one night would be enough to send me to the afterlife. Didn't we agree I'd stay a couple more days to celebrate my sister's birthday? All right, I'm gonna reset it real quick. Yeah, no problem, Truffle. I'd rather people let me know and then I'll just fix it. Shushian tried again. All right, fine. Instead of that, just let me stay in your room. I don't take up much space anyway. Shitu Zhang would wet the bed if you startled him, Jiang Xining said with a dry laugh. And don't you think Nian Qi would go crazy? Shushian sulked. Jiang Xining felt like he was playing the role of a nanny without being paid. It was shortening his already non-existent lifespan. What? Did you upset the master again? I caused him just a little bit of trouble. Shushian pinched his thumb and index finger together to indicate a tiny gap. Right, so it's definitely a troublesome and difficult problem, not just a little one, Jiang Xining thought. As the two were talking, the back door of the courtyard opened, and two men dressed as herb gatherers walked in carrying baskets. They paused when they saw Jiang Xining and Shushian, then greeted Aunt Chen, who had just come out of the kitchen with a basin of food. Aunt Chen, good morning. What are you cooking? It smells amazing. We're starving. Where are the young master and the mistress? The young master and the mistress are busy. Go put away your baskets, wash your hands and faces, and we'll eat soon, Aunt Chen told them. Ah, by the way, one of the herb gatherers said as they put down the baskets. I know we were supposed to be back last evening, but we ran into a horse caravan on the road. They cleared the way, so we were delayed by a night. A horse caravan? What horse caravan? An official one, the herb gatherer said, his tone suddenly turning mysterious. You know how the plague in our county was reported to the authorities? The court sent an official horse caravan for a plague dispelling ritual. They should be entering the county town this morning. Guess who they sent? A ritual? Aunt Chen was startled. You don't mean... The herb gatherer slapped his hand. That's right. They say the caravan is made of those who serve directly under the state preceptor's command. There are too many official titles, and I can't remember them all. But apparently they usually follow the state preceptor. They're probably some of the few who've seen that man's face. And that's where we stopped last time. All right. So, we potentially have some awkwardness coming, which will be very interesting. But before that, let's do our counts. Actually, before that, let me write down when we're starting, since I messed that up in the previous one. All right. Our count. Donkey count stands at 75. Our Jiang Xining suffering stands at a very sad 24. Our wanted poster count stands at 8. And our face count stands at 13. Truffle, you are on face count and or wanted poster count. Everyone else is welcome to chime in about those and any of the other counts as well. But that being said, one more sip, and away we go. All right. Oop, let's not tap the computer. Chapter 25, The Court of Imperial Sacrifices. On the outskirts of Qingping County, a long procession of horses and carriages advanced in a grand manner. The attire of the group was quite unusual. They wore wide robes with large sleeves, each patterned with fierce beasts on the chest and back. Apart from these designs, the robes were entirely white. They fluttered in the wind, stirred by the galloping horses. Their sleeves billowed like clouds in a striking blend of ferocity and purity. Judging by their robes and builds, the riders were of indeterminate ages. They appeared noble and disciplined, as if they had been fiercely trained in etiquette. On their faces, each wore an ancient beast mask, making it impossible to discern their features. The procession consisted of about 100 people, and they marched in two parallel lines with 3 carriages in the middle that had their curtains tightly drawn. Now just pause for a moment and visualize this. About 100 people wearing white that you aren't able to tell the age of, all wearing fierce beast masks. Walking in lines of 2 around 3 carriages. That is intimidating as hell. Like that is definitely making a statement. On either side of the carriages stood tall banners, 6 in total, with black backgrounds embroidered with faint but intricate patterns. These designs were hard to make out at first glance, but when they caught the sunlight, the outlines of the threads flashed. In the center of each black banner were 2 large coiled characters. Tai Chang, the Court of Imperial Sacrifices. Oh yeah, no, that's definitely spooky. Like, that's intimidating. Yes, another part where I wish there was an animated adaptation. I agree, Truffle. In previous dynasties, the Court of Imperial Sacrifices had been responsible for rituals related to heaven, earth, spirits, and the balance of yin and yang. The court was overseen by a chief and deputy who managed various affairs. However, since the court came under the control of the state preceptor, its authority had become quite limited. The chief of the Court of Imperial Sacrifices now served as the state preceptor's deputy. The current state preceptor was so old that no one could accurately recall his age, and his deputies had already changed several times. It was said that, in addition to selecting 1 or 2 children with Buddhist potential every few years to be raised and educated, the state preceptor also chose a group of talented boys and girls to be trained by the Court of Imperial Sacrifices. Scratching. Scratching. I don't hear scratching. Does anyone else hear scratching? I'll be like, who's messing around if someone's poking my stream, but oh, weird. All right. Well, keep an ear out for that, Truffle, and if it happens again, let me know. These children, known as Zenshi, served as performers in Zenshi served as performers in ritual ceremonies until they turned 16. After that, some of them would take on other roles within the court. The whole of the Court of Imperial Sacrifices, from the chief and deputy to the ritual masters and diviners, and even the Zenshi, were deeply connected to the state preceptor, especially in recent times. They could almost be considered his disciples. The procession split into 2 groups at a fork in the road. About 20 people in 1 carriage headed toward the main district of the county. This was the team tasked with driving out the plague. The remaining 100 or so turned onto a mountain path. The 2 leaders at the head of the second group wore jade pendants with tassels in addition to strings of yellow-skinned copper coins around their waists. The patterns on the jade pendants differed. The pendant on the left featured a black tortoise with a long feathered bird standing on its back, which encircled 2 small characters, Taibu, chief diviner. The pendant on the right bore a horned beast's face with a small octagonal bell hanging above it. This also encircled 2 small characters, Tai Shu, chief ritualist. The chief diviner and the chief ritualist were both from the Court of Imperial Sacrifices. The chief diviner was responsible for divining and interpreting omens, while the chief ritualist oversaw rituals and ceremonies. As the procession began its ascent up the mountain path, the leader wearing the chief diviner pendant raised a hand, signaling the group to halt. The entire procession stopped in an orderly manner without any confusion. The chief ritualist turned to the chief diviner. His masked gaze bore a hint of curiosity. "What is it?" Though his tone was steady, his voice sounded young, like that of a man in his early 20s. "I need to confirm our direction once more," the chief diviner replied, making it clear that she was a woman. Okay, wrong voice. The chief diviner replied, making it clear she was a woman. She sounded just as young, clear, and gentle, but also as effective as a sharp knife. Efficient as a sharp knife, my bad. She removed the rough ancient beast mask, revealing a delicate face far softer than what had concealed it. Judging by her appearance, she seemed even younger than her voice suggested, perhaps only 17 or 18. However, her refined eyebrows and lake-deep eyes lent her an air of quiet composure that balanced her youthful appearance. The position of chief diviner was somewhat unique. Since the responsibilities of divination and dream interpretation were tied to natural talent, those who became chief diviner were often all right. We must sacrifice to the circle. I'm having my dad reset it, so it should be better from now on. But yes. It should be better. I am not playing the Circle of Doom game tonight. Okay. The chief diviner shot him a glance before she returned her attention to the clouds in the sky. The state preceptor has always been pragmatic, fair in both rewards and punishments. There's no such thing as him being pleased or displeased. Besides, even if we return, we won't get to see him. You're overthinking it. Lass, come on. I was just talking. Must you always be so serious? The chief ritualist said helplessly. I must. The chief diviner's expression remained blank. She pulled out a grass knot, a turtle shell, and a piece of paper that carried the scent of bamboo leaves. She carefully unfolded the paper with long-dried ink that had been written some time ago. Its contents were brief, comprising only a few words, and at the bottom was a red seal bearing two simple characters, Tong Dang. After confirming the location mentioned on the paper, she refolded the paper and put it away. She arranged the grass knot and turtle shell in her palm. Be cautious with your words, she warned, fiddling with the objects in her hand, especially when discussing the state preceptor in front of me. I might just lose my temper. The chief ritualist shook his head with a wry smile. You're always putting words in my mouth. Even if you gave me the courage of a lion, I wouldn't dare to speak carelessly about him. Although everyone in the court of imperial sacrifices had some connection to the state preceptor, the nature of those connections varied. For example, the two leaders walking side by side had been brought in by the state preceptor over a decade ago. They had grown up together in the court of imperial sacrifices, received the same education and training, progressed from Zhengxi to regular duties, and eventually reached their current positions. Their experiences were similar, and they were of the same generation. However, while the chief ritualist feared the state preceptor more than he revered him, the chief diviner held far more reverence than fear. Far, far more. Oh, okay. She focused on her divination, ignoring her companion. Then she stared at the grass knot in her hand, raised her head to the sky, and murmured a soft, Huh? What is it? Did we go the wrong way? The chief ritualist asked. The chief diviner furrowed her delicate brow and did not answer for a long time. I divined, she muttered, but it shouldn't be. Stop speaking in half sentences, young lady. What did you divine? He pressed, following her gaze to the sky. Apart from a large mass of dark clouds, he couldn't see anything unusual. He inspected the grass knot in her palm from where he stood, but aside from it being slightly frayed and old, he couldn't spot any issues. Nothing major, she said slowly. I just divined that someone who shouldn't be here is currently in Qingping County. But it's impossible. She shook her head. Never mind. It was just a vague resemblance. I must have made a mistake. Let's focus on the task at hand. I've confirmed our direction. We need to head southwest along the mountain path. Where will we stop? See that mountain over there that looks like a winnowing basket? Yeah, winnowing basket. Yes, I said that right. She gestured forward. Head toward it. The chief ritualist signaled to the procession behind him and spurred his horse in that direction. Let's move out. Meanwhile, in the Fang family backyard, a different conversation was taking place. It had begun when Jiang Shijing, who'd been treating the three feverish beggars, discovered that one of the scrawny little beggars was a young girl. This is quite unfortunate, Jiang Shijing gestured to her left cheek. The rashes on the other two, the old man and the young boy, are still below the neck. But this little girl has a large patch on her left cheek. These rashes aren't just about the broken skin and bleeding. They cause the flesh to rot. The damaged tissue will need to be removed, and even after it heals, her face. Everyone knew how terrifying the rashes could be and saw the extent of the little beggar's blemish. They could imagine the scars it would leave on her face. Half of her face would be disfigured. She was still young. To lose her beauty at such a young age, what would become of her? The tendency to worry was a family trait of the Jiangs, and Jiang Shijing was deeply concerned for this little girl, though she was neither family nor friend. Shushian happened to have been rolling past in his wheelchair. He overheard Jiang Shijing's words and paused. When Shushian was faced with tasks that could be done or skipped, his actions were dictated by his mood. Aunt Chen's cooking skills were genuine, and the hearty meal she had prepared that morning had left him thoroughly satisfied. Someone so well fed and content could even temporarily forget the troubles he'd caused. So much so that he didn't notice Xuan Min emerge from his room and walk toward them. Shushian had never been one to freeload, but pulling out gold pearls in front of everyone would make it seem like he was treating the place as an inn. He'd been wondering how to repay their hospitality when he overheard Jiang Shijing's concerns and had an idea. I might have a solution for the girl's face, he interjected. Jiang Shijing and the others were taken aback. What? What solution? If Shushian could create a paper body for Jiang Xining, who had no physical form, he certainly had a way to address the little girl's facial injuries. But how? I can't conjure new flesh out of thin air, so we'll need to use something as a substitute, he explained. Jiang Shijing was no fool, and together with Jiang Xining, who had first-hand experience of Shushian's abilities, they brainstormed a plan. A substitute. Something that can blend with a human face. What about a mask? Shitu Zhang, who had been eating nearby, raised his hand. I can carve one. I'll make sure it's luxurious. Shut it, Shushian glared. Does food not even quiet you down? Have you ever seen a face adorned with blooming flowers and coins? Shitu Zhang hung his head and returned to his meal. You gotta feel a little bad for Shitu Zhang. Like, he's basically just been pulled into this because of the locks he carved, and then he found Shushian's bone and carved it because he was afraid for his life, and now he's just stuck on this quest with them. And he's constantly just being told to shut up. That poor stonemason just can't get a break. No, he can't, Truffle. I meant the kind used in disguises. Oh, I meant the kind used in disguises. Jiang Xining tried to clarify. Something that can fit the face. But since it's still a mask, it ultimately depends on you. He looked at Shushian, who nodded. That's more or less what I had in mind. But who could make such a thing? Jiang Shijing asked, somewhat embarrassed. Shitu Zhang quickly swallowed his food. I can. Really? Don't you just carve stones? Shushian asked skeptically. Some skills are transferable, Shitu Zhang said, waving his hands. I've seen someone do it before, and besides, I have nimble hands. I can make it detailed. Pudgy, balding man boasting about his dexterity was quite a sight. They're just shitting on him this episode. Like, oh my goodness. However, no one else present had his level of skill or knew the art of disguise firsthand, so the task fell to him anyway. Shitu Zhang wasted no time and listed the materials he needed, then went to wash his hands thoroughly. I appreciate the washed hands, especially in this crazy day and age. While he was busy, the others were also preoccupied. Lunian Qi had been sitting in a corner of the yard since the early morning. In one hand, he held the black cloth that had been used to blindfold Shitu Zhang during his kidnapping, and with the other, he drew on the ground with his sticks. He would ponder his drawings for a while, then erase them and start over. The materials Shitu Zhang needed weren't excessive, and fortunately, Feng Cheng's household had no shortage of supplies, especially those related to medicine. Aside from one special ingredient, everything else was readily available. What's still missing? Jiang Shijing asked. Shitu Zhang coughed. Glue, he muttered, like he had a toothache. Shushian spun around in an instant. What kind of glue? Dragon glue, Shitu Zhang said with a wince. What the hell kind is dragon glue? I've never heard of it. It's glue made from dragon skin, Shitu Zhang said. Had he just signed his own death warrant? He mentally slapped himself. Why did you have to volunteer for this? You're digging your own grave. Nonsense, Shushian spat. His face darkened. Who dares to make glue from dragon skin? Point them out to me. No, it's just a name. You know how it is. Whenever there's something rare and mysterious, people like to give it a grandiose name. 9 times out of 10, they associate it with the dragons, even though it's nothing to do with them. That glue, it's actually something brought by merchants from the western regions. It's probably made from animal hides, okay? But Shushian's temper had flared at the mention of dragon skin. Forget about using some dubious glue. Use pig skin instead, he declared. Got it, Shitu Zhang said, not daring to argue with the wise one. Shushian had spoken with great authority. When he turned around, he found Xuanmin standing behind him. After a brief, silent exchange of glances, Shushian rolled his wheelchair away at breakneck speed. Xuanmin watched him go in baffled silence. Have to give him credit, that's a nice save. Yeah, he does know how to bluff. Glue made from pig skin would actually work quite well, but the key lay in getting the timing and heat just right. Too early or too late, and it wouldn't work. Shitu Zhang stood by the pot and waited. When he estimated it was about time, he reached to scoop out the glue, only to have his hand stopped by someone else's. He recognized the snow-white sleeve immediately and turned around respectfully. Master? Xuanmin didn't say much as he looked at the pot. Let it simmer for another quarter of an hour. Master, do you also know how to make that kind of mask? As soon as the words left his mouth, Shitu Zhang regretted them. Xuanmin paused, and his face hardened with a pensive frown. I was just asking casually, Master. No need to take it so seriously. Shi Tuzhang silently rotated toward Jiang Xining, who crouched by the stove, tending the fire. What did I do? I'm panicking. Shi Tuzhang mouthed. Jiang Xining shrugged. You brought this on yourself. When Shi Tuzhang reluctantly turned back, Xuanmin had pulled his hand away and was frowning at the pigskin glue in the pot, lost in thought. To be honest, his pristine monk's robes, untouched by even a speck of dust, were out of place in the smoky kitchen. Just standing by the stove seemed to make the fire shrink back timidly. Shi Tuzhang couldn't begin to guess what Xuanmin was thinking, but judging from his expression, it didn't seem pleasant. Not daring to disturb him, Shi Tuzhang tried to usher the great master out. Then he and Jiang Xining could stare at each other in awkward silence. Fortunately, while Xuanmin sometimes seemed detached from human affairs, he was far more approachable than Shushian, who delighted in stirring up trouble. The bubbling sound of the pigskin glue brought Xuanmin to the present. The fire's too low. He strode out of the kitchen without so much as a backward glance at Shi Tuzhang or Jiang Xining. The hem of his snow-white robe swept past the door and disappeared. Shi Tuzhang let out a long breath. That was suffocating. I'm getting too old for that kind of scare. My heart was pounding like crazy. Jiang Xining quietly exhaled and added more straw to the fire. That master really is something, Shi Tuzhang marveled. How does he know how to do everything? Take this, for example. He gestured to the pot of pigskin glue. No one around here dabbles in this kind of thing. I only got to see it once when a wealthy man took me to Ling Shao. That area is close to the border, and the people and affairs there are complicated. Some folks learn these kinds of skills to protect themselves. These things take years of experience to master. I'm not saying this to be rude, but the master is so young. Even if he's talented, his age limits how much he could have seen and experienced. How did he accumulate all that knowledge? Shi Tuzhang wasn't the only one wondering this. Jiang Xining often felt the same way, thinking that Xuanmin's wisdom and composure far exceeded what someone of his age should possess. Shi Tuzhang, a midlife man with few hobbies, had an endless fascination with uncovering people's pasts. He peeked into the courtyard and lowered his voice. Take Wise One's Shu, for example. Sometimes he seems at a disadvantage against the master. Like today. I noticed the Wise One seemed to be avoiding him. Just think about it. A man in his 20s able to subdue a real dragon? A real dragon? How old must he really be? He really rambled on like a bald sparrow with 8 mouths. And another thing, how old is the Dragon Wise One anyway? Yeah, Xuanmin is also wondering the same thing, right? Midlife man with few hobbies is so fun. I was about to mention that. I was like, that's a little harsh. Shi Tuzhang, a midlife man with few hobbies, had an endless. He was like, wow, they're really shitting on Shi Tuzhang this chapter. Oh, yeah, there's so much shade in this chapter. Jiang Xining rubbed his ears, which were ringing from Shi Tuzhang's incessant chatter. Even ghosts don't know. This dude is going to become the new Jiang Xining. I always love it when you see something out of the corner of your eye and you're like, what was that? And there's nothing there. Sparrow with 8 mouths is such a zinger, too. It is. Shi Tuzhang may not have understood how Xuanmin knew how to make such masks, but he followed the master's instructions precisely, stoking the fire and waiting the full quarter of an hour. Afterward, he scooped out the glue into a bowl and carried the hot vessel into the courtyard with a series of huffs and puffs. The bowl clattered as he slapped it on the table, then he pinched his ears and hopped from foot to foot. It's done, it's done. Where are the other materials? Feng Chang had gathered the necessary materials and placed them on the table. Some were chopped, while others had been ground into juice. They were arranged in dishes and bowls like ingredients for a meal. Shitu Zhang didn't waste any more time and got to work. The others were curious, but kept their distance and watched in silence without disturbing him with comments or questions. Shushian found the whole process quite interesting. He'd heard of human skin masks before, but this was the first time he'd seen one crafted. However, due to certain unmentionable reasons, he couldn't stay in one place for long. Every time he caught sight of Xuan Min, he would roll his wheelchair away. Sometimes he headed to the front hall to bother the twin brothers, and other times he pestered the beggars. Can't even enjoy the show in peace, he scoffed, while avoiding Xuan Min like a coward. As he was zooming around in circles, he missed most of the mask-making process. By the time he made his way back, Shitu Zhang was nearly done. Only the mold was left to complete. Ah yes, the dragon zoomies. The little beggar girl was still bedridden, and half her face was terribly disfigured, which made it difficult to work on her directly. This gave Shitu Zhang's craftsmanship a chance to shine. He went into the room and studied the intact side of the girl's face for a long time, memorizing every detail. Then he gestured vaguely to the damaged portion as if visualizing the reconstruction. When he emerged, he confidently started to shape the mold. This was undoubtedly the most meticulous and time-consuming part of the process. After a long time, he unveiled the finished product. However, it wasn't what Shushian had expected. He had imagined a single complete piece, but instead there were two separate layers. One a little thicker with a gentle curve, the other as thin as a cicada's wing. Huh? Why are there two pieces? Shushian couldn't help but ask. When making this kind of mask, it's better to add than to subtract, Shitu Zhang explained. For example, filling out a thin face or raising a low nose bridge. That girl's face is too uneven. She's got broken skin and missing flesh. We need to fill it in to make it smooth. The thicker piece is used to fill in the missing parts, while the thinner one blends the filled areas with the rest of the skin. It's like patching, then covering. As Shushian listened, he stared at the two pieces in Shitu Zhang's hands. The color and texture had been meticulously adjusted, and at first glance, they almost looked like real human skin. Wait, real human skin. Shushian whirled his chair around and without a word rolled his wheelchair over to Xuan Min. He tugged on Xuan Min's sleeve, pulling him down a few inches. Bald donkey, does what Shitu Zhang's holding look like what you remembered in Wen Village? You said there were scenes from your youth where you were holding human skin. Could it have been something like this? Though he phrased it as a question, Shushian was about 70 to 80% certain of this. After all, why would a teenager, especially one with Xuanmin's temperament, hold peeled human skin? Given his reputation, even a drop of blood, was that likely? Human skin mask, on the other hand, would have been a different story. And I did not forget the donkey. 76. Having asked his question, Shushian fell into a bout of wild speculation, but he didn't hear a response from Xuan Min. When he finally looked up, he saw Xuan Min gazing down at him, his expression unreadable. Neither happy nor upset, not unlike his usual aloof demeanor, but with a subtle difference. Yeah, no, that was a pretty long time without a bald donkey. You're right, Annika. Shushan couldn't quite put his finger on what was different, but being stared at so neutrally made him feel guilty again. The urge to roll his wheelchair away surged inside him. Not running anymore? Schwanman replied, his tone a bit salty. The way Schwanman phrased the question made it seem like Shushan was being cowardly. Annoyed, Shushan quickly changed the subject. So, was it really a human skin mask? You were making masks at such a young age, instead of copying scriptures? I don't remember. He didn't deny the first part of Shushan's statement, which meant he tacitly agreed with Shushan's guess that what he had been holding back then were parts or the entirety of a mask. Still, why would a 13 or 14-year-old need something like that? Shushan narrowed his eyes, deep in thought, when he suddenly felt the sleeve he had been tugging pull away. Then Schwanmin gently gripped Shushan's chin and turned it toward the stone table where everyone had gathered. Schwanmin's voice sounded beside Shushan. Go finish what you promised to do first. He didn't know what to say and instinctively reached up to touch his just pinched chin. By the time he came to and looked toward Schwanmin, the monk was already back inside the house. He clearly had no intention of watching the spectacle. Shushan couldn't tell if it was just his imagination, but doesn't the bald donkey seem a little upset? 77. So I'm thinking there was kind of a Jinshi situation going on where Schwanmin needed a mask because he was too pretty. Potentially. My thought is that he might have been too powerful and he needed the mask to kind of look older, to kind of be respected, or to protect his identity. I could see the too pretty, though. He does have a very nice face. With a proper substitute in hand, Shushan worked his magic on the two pieces of faux skin. Jiang Xinjing followed Shushan's instructions and tested the pieces on the back of her hand. Once the two layers adhered to her skin, they looked as if they had grown there naturally. The texture, color, and even the tiny imperfections were indistinguishable from real skin. Could be. Perhaps he's from a sect of Buddhist Batmans. That would be pretty cool, Truffle. When the little girl wakes up, give this to her. If she can handle what she looks like when her wounds scab over, fine. If not, just attach this to her face. There won't be any trace of it, Shushan explained. The effects won't wear off as long as I'm alive. Buddhist Batman is so funny. It's definitely an interesting concept. Wasn't he trained technically by which superhero was trained by Tibetan monk? No, I'm thinking Doctor Strange. I'm thinking Doctor Strange, aren't I? He was trained by Guild of Assassins, wasn't he? Batman. They all just mix together after a while. The effect won't wear off as long as I'm alive. This only... yes. To be fair, I've learned from movies that monks are not to be messed with. Yes, Doctor Strange was the Tibetan monks. Got it. Shushan, do you think you could make a mold of my face? Then maybe make me look 20 years young. Oh, Shugonzi, do you think you could make a mold of my face? Maybe make me look 20 years younger, Aunt Chen half joked. Uncle Chen turned his face to the side and pulled Aunt Chen away by the hand. Okay. Batman was trained by the assassins, among others. Got it. The members of the Fang family, each with their own temperaments, nevertheless formed an unspoken agreement not to pry. Although they had seen Shushan perform feats beyond the capabilities of ordinary people, not a single one of them asked any questions. They were both polite and considerate. As everyone was tidying up the dishes and bowls, Lu Nianqi, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, waved at Shushan. "What is it? Have you found something?" Shushan asked. Lu Nianqi nodded. "I'm not as skilled as Shiju. I can't divine the exact times, but I can tell that at least from last night until this morning, the person who touched this black cloth was still in the place I divined. As for whether they'll leave tonight, that's hard to say." I also love Aunt Chen. She's a real one. Um, Sorry, hang on. Um, no matter. Let's go take a look. If we can catch them red-handed, that's great. If not, we can at least confirm that they haven't gone far. There will be some traces left, Shushan said. He cocked his head slightly. Go on, tell me. Roughly, where is it? A mountain shaped like a winnowing basket. Shaped like a winnowing basket? Shushan, who wasn't very familiar with the area, repeated the words blankly. Xing Si piped up from where she had been watching him. Mount Boji! I know, I know! Look, go straight in that direction, exit the main city gate, follow the southwest mountain path, and after following the forest outskirts, you'll reach it. It was nearly noon, so Shushan wanted to waste no more time. As soon as he heard this, he made the decision to set out. According to Xingxi, it wouldn't take them much time to get there. The chief ritualist leading the Court of Imperial Sacrifices procession at the end of the southwest mountain path looked up at the mountain ahead. Ritualist was the man. No, female. We should almost be there. Once we get past that stretch of forest outskirts, we'll be close. True to its name, Mount Boji, Winnowing Basket, was located behind a stretch of wild forest near a small village on the outskirts of Qingping County. The sunny side of the mountain was dotted with large paddy fields that gave it a fresh and picturesque appearance, half hidden in the thin mist. However, it was called Mount Boju because the shaded side had a large basket-like depression, perpetually shrouded in dense fog. Standing at the mountain's peak and looking down, one could not see a thing within the depression. Whew, that's intriguing. Occasionally, someone would trip and fall in, or a curious soul would venture in on their own. None ever returned. That's exactly where my brain went when they said a depression. Oh, ritualist is a young man, the diviner is a woman. Well, my bad. Thank you, Ruby. Appreciate it. I will probably continue to mess this up. The image of falling down a almost like a crevice, or I'm gonna call it a crevice that you can't see the bottom of, is horrifying to me. It's like right up there next to my thalassophobia with like the ocean you can't see the depths of. Like, definitely got a bit of that going on. So this is like the cousin of that. So I'm like, oh no. As a result, there were many rumors about Mount Boji. Some said that too many people had died in the cavity, turning it into a mass grave of bones. Lovely! I think poison fog is probably my favorite Wuxia trope. Others claimed that there were inhabitants in it, and faint human voices could sometimes be heard, along with eerie sounds resembling a baby's cry. It's making it better and better. So much better. Whether the sounds were human or ghosts, no one could say. The rumors were numerous, and no one had ever, yeah, none had ever been confirmed. Whenever there's a place like that, I get unreasonably curious about what's down there. I always think thalassophobia has to do with seaweed. To be fair, the texture of seaweed is gross. It is unfortunately gross. Yes. Seaweed is the I appreciate your courage, Annika, because I am totally okay not going in caves or in like water I can't see past or through that I know stuff is in. It, it's like, "Ugh, no thanks." A decade or so ago, there were those who sought death there, but such reckless individuals were hard to find these days. As a result, even the legends had faded and few people talked about it anymore. The younger generations only knew that there was a Mount Boji and that it was a place not to be casually ventured into. Beyond that, they knew little. The place where my grandparents used to live, called the Sinks, where the river goes into a tiny cave and disappears under the mountain, and I always wished I could go down there. Water and tunnels is a hard no for me. Again, power to you, Annika, but I agree with Truffle on this one. That's a hard pass for me. I love your explorer spirit. I will stay in my nerd cave. The court's procession moved apace. They avoided the sunny side of the mountain with its small village and paddy fields, and instead circled around to the shaded side. Before long, they encountered Mount Boji's fog. The chief ritualist raised his hand again, halting the procession behind him. "Which way do we go, lass?" he asked. Before them were two paths. One skittered the depression and led to the side of the mountain, while the other plunged deep into the fog. Hey, nothing's wrong with you, Annika. You just have more courage than I do. As long as you took precautions and were safe, I mean, it sounds like a cool adventure, just not one that I'd be going on. Yeah, it's that you're not wrong. We just know our limits. Okay. The fog was damp and cold with a faint, mysterious scent. Something woody or medicinal. In both appearance and smell, it seemed toxic. There's no safe way to go down that cave, so alas, I will have to give up on the dream. Well, I'm glad you're being safe, Annika. The chief diviner, who had already confirmed the route multiple times, glanced once more at the turtle shell in her hand before pointing decisively at the fog. "This is indeed the right way. Let's go." The chief ritualist sighed. "Regardless of anything else, everyone protect your faces and your eyes," he told the procession behind them. They were all mortal beings, and none of them were foolish enough to cling to false confidence in an unknown situation. The members of the procession each pulled a small brocade pouch from their robes. They took out a pill to counteract the poison and placed it under their tongues, then retrieved a simple, archaic-looking sachet, pressed it against their noses beneath their masks. The chief diviner lifted a crescent-shaped bell from the saddlebag on her horse. Its silver edges were adorned with small octagonal bells. She pulled out a stack of paper talismans, tossed one into the thick fog, and shook the crescent bell 3 times. I got this. Next, she spurred her horse forward. The horse, guided by the faint tinkling of the bells, walked into the dense fog. I hope they gave the horse a pill. Like, come on. The chief diviner led the way with the chief ritualist close behind. The procession, originally in 2 columns, now formed a single line, moving in an orderly fashion into the fog. Inside it, everything was a vast expanse of white. Nothing could be seen, not even the shapes of the horses beneath them. The feeling of being cut off from both front and back was incredibly unsettling, even terrifying. However, the chief diviner's face showed only vigilance, not panic. Her delicate brows furrowed slightly as she maintained a steady rhythm, shaking the bell every 5 steps, guiding the long procession deep into the mountain depression. I'm not going to ring the bell again. About halfway through, a young and inexperienced member of the group, who had never seen anything like this, began to panic. That'd be me. That would be me. When people panic, their breathing becomes erratic. The young Zen Shi had just entered the fog when he took a few extra breaths, allowing the fog to enter his mouth and nose. Before they had proceeded 3 more steps, there was a dull thud, and the Zen Shi slid off his horse. He collapsed to the ground and clenched his throat. His lungs gasped for breath like a bellows. The person behind him, though uneasy, adjusted his own breathing. With his fear suppressed, he reached out to pull the convulsing youth back onto the horse. The chief ritualist's voice drifted faintly from the front, as if coming from another world. Don't break, don't break the rhythm. Keep your breathing steady. Even with such instructions, 7 or 8 Zenshi still succumbed to the fog during the journey, their bodies convulsing as they spat out bloody foam. They were dead before long. Okay. Alright. Also, I grew up with it drilled into my head that water is not necessarily my friend. You would love cave swift studies. So, that does sound interesting, but yeah. They love caves with waterfalls, so the only way to take a census of chicks is to rappel down. That's cool. Really want to see a crescent-shaped bell. You know what? Give me a sec. Let me see if I can find one. We're on the next chapter, so. Crescent-shaped bell. Bell. Crescent-shaped bell is a decorative or ritual hanging ornament featuring a crescent moon frame or motif painted on a functional metal ceramic or brass bell. Um Hang on. Ancient. Let's see. Let's see. Huh. I think this is. Oh. I think this is it. I think. Come on, you can load. I think this is it. I think maybe this is what they're talking about? I could be wrong. This was the best I could find. It's a belle of ancient China and beyond. Apparently, there was an exhibit at the Smithsonian. It's pretty cool. Okay, checking on bird chicks is a science in itself. You should see the equipment toted out for raptors. One peregrine banding involved feather dusters to ward off aerial attacks. I believe it. That's wild. My cousin works in wildlife conservation and does something with penguins. I wonder if she had crazy stories. Probably, especially if she works Adelaides. That species is crazy aggressive. Interesting. All right. Chapter 26, 143. Will probably be 15 because I'm going to take a quick drink. 15. Okay, now a quick sip of tea. Okay. Chapter 68, The Building in the Fog. Ooh. Blue penguins in New Zealand. Cool. The crescent bell rang urgently 5 times to signal that the chief diviner had reached their destination. All right, I said I wasn't going to ring, but you know what? There we go. They stood roughly in the center of the mountain depression. Surprisingly, the fog here was not as thick as it had appeared from the mountain peak. Instead, it was a thin layer, like the mist that rises from the ground on a rainy day, nothing like the smothering fog they had encountered earlier. In this translucent mist stood a small bamboo building, about 3 stories tall and exquisitely crafted. Perhaps because it had been shrouded in the fog for so long, every bamboo pole of the building gleamed with moisture, appearing clean and fresh. If not for the poisonous fog, it would have been an elegant and tranquil residence. The chief diviner and chief ritualist, who had reached it first and advanced and examined the small building. Let me restart that. The chief diviner and the chief ritualist, who had reached it first, examined the small building from their horses. The rest of the group arrived and encircled the building. If not for their masks, their expressions would have revealed how grim they felt. Just finding this place had already cost several lives. Who could feel at ease in the aftermath? Don't let your guards down. Even the slightest amount of fog is toxic, the chief diviner reminded the Zen Shi. She exchanged a glance with the chief ritualist, and the two dismounted. With practiced ease, they placed paper talismans around the building, setting up a simple array. The moment the array was complete, the fog around the building dissipated, drawn toward the thicker fog outside. Only then did the court procession put away their sachets and dismount, following their leaders to inspect the area. Follow the albatross cam, and a few penguins have visited the cliff briefly. Cute. They had come here to find someone. Who exactly, then she didn't know. They had only seen a portrait, but they had no idea what the person did or why they were looking for them. Only the chief diviner and chief ritualist knew the details. The chief ritualist glanced at the three-story bamboo building and asked the chief diviner once more, Are you sure? Wait, are you sure it's here? The chief diviner herself felt that this place was both an excellent hiding spot and a potential death trap. If the fog kept people out, it was perfect for concealment, but if it didn't, there would be no escape. She didn't answer. Enough. Let's search the area first, the chief ritualist said, no longer asking questions. He quickly assigned tasks to the Zenshi. Soon, the two leaders and five Zenshi entered the bamboo building. They headed straight for the rooms inside. Outside, the remaining 100 or so members of the procession guarded the perimeter. The three-story bamboo building wasn't particularly large, and the seven of them quickly finished searching it. Well, the chief ritualist hurried down from the top floor. He held a scroll in his hand. He flipped through it, hoping to find something, but then shook his head and tossed it onto a wooden table. The chief diviner stood in the elegant and simple guest hall on the ground. Nothing, she admitted. The chief ritualist crossed his arms and scanned the area before saying, Yes, I'm not doubting your calculations, but could you have missed some clues that affected the result? Faced with the facts, the chief diviner wasn't angered by the question. Instead, she sat down at the table, placed the grass knot and turtle shell on its surface, and began to examine them carefully. Should we burn the shell again? The chief ritualist asked. The chief diviner shook her head. It would be no use. You can't burn the shell twice in one day for the same matter. Let me take another look. However, after a moment, she couldn't help but murmur, I'll take it for a wanted poster. It's implied, but I think it counts. So, wanted poster is now at 9. Nothing. It's still the person I mentioned earlier. When I was doing my calculations, they happened to be in this town and were caught in the shell's patterns. The chief ritualist was utterly confused. The person you said couldn't possibly be here? Who exactly are you talking about? The chief diviner looked up at him, her dark eyes visible through the holes in her mask. They were filled with uncertainty. It must be someone with a similar birth chart or fate. It can't possibly be the one I'm thinking of. After all, stop beating around the bush. Who is it? Just say it. The chief diviner unfolded the thin paper stamped with the red seal and pointed at the characters. Tong Deng. The state preceptor. Who? The chief ritualist subconsciously reached for his ear, but stopped when he touched the edge of his mask. The state preceptor. No, that's impossible. The chief ritualist shook his head vigorously. The state preceptor is still at the top of Famen Temple. We saw him before we left. He's in seclusion. You know the rules. If he leaves midway, all his efforts will be wasted. Of course I do. That's why I said it probably is just someone with a similar fate. It couldn't possibly be him, but there's no but in this case. The chief ritualist waved his hand. Let's focus on our primary task. However, even as he said this, he couldn't shake a strange sense of discomfort. Sure, he's in seclusion. Just as the chief diviner turned her attention back to the turtle shell, a faint sound came from the distance, like something just brushing against bamboo leaves. At the same time, the grass knot on the table shifted slightly, as if blown by a breeze, changing its position. The chief diviner gathered her things and hurried out of the bamboo building. There was definitely a change, she said once she was outside. We need to leave this depression immediately. If we delay any longer, that person will escape. About 10 minutes later, another group of people stood at the crossroads where the procession of the Court of Imperial Sacrifices had stopped. Which way should we go? The way that looks like a death trap, or that one, which looks clear and fog-free," said a short and stout man with a dejected expression. Of course, it was Shushan and his companions. Since Jiang Shijing's birthday was in 2 days, Shushan didn't want to delay matters, so he left Jiang Shining behind at the Feng residence to spend more time with his sister. The rest, Lu Nianqi, Shi Tuzhang, and Xuanmin, he brought along. Lu Nianqi was a human compass, though his accuracy was hit or miss. Still, he was useful for someone as directionally challenged as Xuanmin, or Shushan. Shi Tuzhang remembered the person who had kidnapped him, so he would be needed for identification. If they found the culprit, and Xuanmin, whether he was useful or not, Shushan felt he had to bring him along. He couldn't explain this impulse. Perhaps it was habit, after they had traveled together for so long. Not bringing him just felt odd. However, while he had followed his inexplicable urge to drag Xuanmin along with him, Shushan now regretted it. After all, last night's incident still hung between them, and Xuanmin's mood had been off all day. Plus what Feng Cheng said earlier. Ah, yes. The effects of dragon saliva wouldn't wear off in just a day or two. Oh, my. And that's not just from me. It's literally written, oh, my. Why is it odd? Oh, I don't know. Well, Shu Xian was mentally berating himself for being an idiot. Lu Nianqi pointed at the fog. Do you even need to ask at a time like this? Obviously, we take the path that looks like certain death, he said dryly. Is this fog poisonous or not? Shi Tuzhang asked. If it's certain death, how could it not be poisonous? I love that oh my is canon. It's also italicized, so it's oh my. Wade through it. Screw you, Shi Tuzhang almost turned around on the spot to run. What was even more eerie was that, on top of the woodsy scent, he thought he caught a whiff of blood in the fog. Fresh blood, at that. His legs turned to jelly, and he wanted to burst into tears in front of Shushan. Maybe that would invoke a shred of pity from the wise one. Fortunately, before Shi Tuzhang could conjure any tears, Xuanmin spoke up. His tone was indifferent. No need to panic. As he spoke, he reached for a paper talisman. His composed demeanor reassured Shi Tuzhang somewhat. After all, Xuanmin was always reliable. If he said they could cross the fog, there was definitely a way to survive crossing the fog. At the sight of Xuanmin's talisman, Shi Tuzhang knew he was about to set up an array. He sidestepped to avoid getting in the way and even tugged Lu Nianqi along with him. However, just as Xuanmin was about to use the talisman, Shu Xian snapped out of his daydreams. In one swift motion, he pressed Xuanmin's hand back down. Such a trivial trick doesn't need a grand setup. Watch me handle it. Shu Xian tilted his head and smirked. Lu Nianqi knows what's up, right? With that, he slapped the armrest of his chair. A faint crack echoed, and a fierce howling wind swept by, like a raging dragon crossing a river. It brought with it an overwhelming force that surged forward. Whoosh! The dense fog that had lingered for who knows how many years was swept away like it had never been. Its absence revealed the old trees in the mountain depression, bent low to the ground, and a clear path. Shushian turned to Xuanmin with his chin raised. Though he didn't say anything, his expression, which was mischievous as ever, somehow managed to convey a sense of, aren't you going to praise me? Xuanmin glanced down at him. The armrest of your chair is cracked. His tone was still a little salty. Xu Xian thought someone like Xuan Min, who couldn't read the room and always ruined the mood, deserved to be buried at the bottom of the ocean. With the thick white fog gone, things that had been hidden by the mist were now revealed. Xuan Min scanned the path and the half-withered grass on either side. Someone came here and then left. Xu Xian snorted loudly in response. Who says I can't be sarcastic too? Shi Tuzhang, who had overheard Xuan Min, was baffled. Had someone really come here? Why would an ordinary person come to a place like this? To seek death? Yet as he spoke, he realized something else. Wait, they came and then left? They left alive? Anyone who managed to enter this place definitely didn't stumble onto it by accident, and anyone who could survive the fog unscathed was no ordinary person. Shu Zhang clicked his tongue. Could there be another group looking for our target too? Seems like he caused trouble for more than one party. But if they came in and went, it means they either settled their debt, took him away to settle their debt, or the person they were looking for wasn't here to begin with. Shi Zhang wasn't stupid, and he loved to chatter. In just a short while, his mouth had done the work of four, voicing everyone's thoughts. Xu Xian turned to Lu Nianqi. He thought the dragon was going to ask if his divinations were accurate, or tell him to redivine the changes. But just as Lu Nianqi was about to speak, Xu Xian stopped looking his way. He instead seized a handful of wind and leaned back in his chair like a boss. The wheels of his chair started rolling down the path toward the depths of the mountain depression. In the blink of an eye, he was already dozens of feet away. His drawling voice drifted back to the others. Let's just search this place. If the person we seek really isn't here, we'll go after the group that left. A human only has 2 legs. Even if they're on horseback, that's only 2 more. How fast could they be? I could catch up to them, even after a nap. Well, there was always someone who loved to show off and make things difficult for those stuck on the ground. Xu Xian sped ahead alone. Aside from the overgrown weeds on either side of the path, there were no other obstacles. It seemed the fog had been the biggest barrier. In no time, he arrived at the 3-story bamboo building at the center of the mountain depression. Xu Xian was the type who disliked relying on others, mainly because there were very few people capable of rendering him aid in the first place. Xuan Min was the only exception, but even he was just a mortal, and Xu Xian still held his precious string of copper coins. Oh, that's right, he still has them. Okay. So naturally, Xu Xian took the lead. His intention was to investigate the center of the depression first, then thoroughly search the rest of the area. If there were any traps or obstacles, he could deal with them to avoid future trouble. If the person they were looking for wasn't here, it would save those 2-legged mortals the trouble of running back and forth. In short, his demeanor was carefree and unrestrained, and his aura was imposing. However, this bamboo building had 3 floors. The stairs twisted and turned. Its bamboo planks were thin, and everything was interconnected. One wrong move, and the whole thing could collapse. With all that in mind, someone used the wind to propel himself to the building's front, then effortlessly lifted his chair to the 2nd-floor balcony in one smooth motion. He fully intended to continue this imposing momentum and enter the building to ransack it, but he realized the damn door was too narrow to fit his chair. To get in, he'd have to throw the door open. But if he did that, the entire building would probably collapse. He couldn't touch the door, nor could he move past it. In short, the damn door had been put there to piss him off. It was a blatant provocation. That was why, when Shi Tuzhang and Lu Nianqi followed Xuan Min to the front of the building, they saw Xu Xian sitting blank-faced by the 2nd-floor door. He had his head propped up with one hand. Almighty dragon bested by a door. Oh. At Shushian's cold expression, Shitu Zhang asked, "What's wrong? Is our target really not here?" Shushian gave a frosty glare. Shitu Zhang, certain he'd said something wrong, covered his mouth. He hasn't started searching yet. Lu Nianqi was not afraid of Shushian's temper. Huh? Why not? Shitu Zhang's words were muffled behind his hand. Lu Nianqi didn't have time to answer before Xuanmin walked up the bamboo stairs to Shushian. The other two said nothing more and scurried after him. Xuanmin didn't ask Shushian why he was just sitting there. Instead, he walked through the 3 interconnected rooms on the 2nd floor, then proceeded up the delicate stairs to the 3rd floor. Shitu Zhang and Lu Nianqi, not wanting to stand idly by or annoy Shushian, followed. They turned the entire bamboo building inside out in record time. However, they found nothing. Not a trace of the person they were looking for. Not even a ghost. Shushian watched them come and go in front of him. Though his face remained flat, he practically radiated irritation. Really, there's nothing here, Shitu Zhang muttered. No, he's here, Lu Nianqi insisted. As he spoke, a faint rustle of leaves came from the forest, and they all froze. Shitu Zhang peered into the depths of the forest. Could he be hiding there and have perhaps taken the chance to run? Without the fog blocking the view, the forest was clear, and the sound was distant enough to pinpoint its direction. After a moment, a pitch-black crow flew from the canopy. Maybe the previous group had the same thought as you, Lu Nianqi said. Huh! You mean they also searched the place and found nothing, and then heard the sound in the forest, and that does make sense. Since he was a coward, Shitu Zhang was also neurotic. He could hear one thing and pull a whole string of related thoughts from it. What you said made it sound like that bird is some kind of spirit that deliberately led people away. Maybe it really is. Think about it. How could that bird stay in the forest with such thick fog? Could the fog really be non-toxic? No way. So the bird must be suspicious. Oh, Shitu Zhang. Lu Nianqi didn't care to respond to his long ramble. He repeated his earlier words. The person we're looking for is still here. How do you know? Shitu Zhang darted his eyes around the room. Did you divine something else? When did you do it? I sure didn't see you. Lu Nianqi rubbed his ears as if to drive out Shitu Zhang's incessant buzzing. I didn't divine anything. It's intuition. As someone else had mentioned intuition, Shushian might have told them to get lost. But when someone with a spiritual constitution like Lu Nianqi spoke about intuition, it wasn't so easy to dismiss. Use your intuition again, Shushian said to him. If that person is here, where in the building would they be? Lu Nianqi blinked. Since when could intuition be summoned at will? Some people really took advantage of the fact that others didn't dare strike them when they were completely unreasonable. Lu Nianqi rolled his eyes in restrained frustration. After standing still for a moment, he pointed at a spot. Here. He was pointing nowhere else but the room right next to Shushian. Just great. Stuck at the door again. They really are roasting Shitu Zhang hard. That room only contains a table, 2 chairs, and a wooden cabinet. To be honest, I even checked the drawers in the cabinet. There's no one there, Shitu Zhang grumbled. The inner chamber, Lu Nianqi said. The design of the bamboo building was quite unique. It was clearly the work of someone with refined taste. The first floor only had rooms on one side, while the other side was a platform supported by bamboo poles. The platform and the roof of the first floor rooms formed a large enough plain, upon which rested the second floor they were now on. However, the first floor rooms didn't have doors that could be accessed accessed from the outside. You had to go up the stairs to the second floor platform, though through the room next to Shushan, then go back down the stairs inside to reach the first floor. The inner chamber Lunianchi mentioned was the one on the first floor. We've searched that room too, Shitu Zhang said. It just contains a bookshelf and a desk. I even shook out every book to see if someone was hiding inside. I mean, okay, to be fair, the paper figures that they use for the spirits and that Shushian was using for a while, that's a fair point. I didn't think about it. I thought he was being like sarcastic, but that's actually a fair assessment of hey, maybe he's hiding in a book. Fair point. Shushian tapped his finger on the armrest, then shake out the books again. Young people these days, why do they love to joke around, especially when you can't scold or hit them? Shitu Zhang groused to himself as he trailed behind Lu Nianqi into the room. Shitu Zhang was unable to resist a backward glance. If he hadn't known Shu Xian's true identity, Shitu Zhang might have called him Little Brother Shu. But Shu Xian was a dragon. Would he dare call him a brother? Calling him ancestor might have been suitably grand, but it would still feel strange. Jiang Xining called him wise one, but that term carried a certain connotation. If someone not close to him used it, Shu Xian would definitely give them a beating. As a result, every time Shitu Zhang wanted to address Shu Xian, he gave up because he didn't know how. He wanted to ask Shu Xian why he wasn't coming in, but looked to Xuanmin instead. Master, why aren't you joining us? Felt a bit ominous that only he and Lu Nianqi were moving forward, especially since Lu Nianqi was so certain that someone was still hiding downstairs. Fair. I'm coming, Shu Xian replied. Xuanmin replied. He eyed Shu Xian, who was sitting there doing nothing, before he bent down to pick him up. What are you doing? Having grown accustomed to moving at lightning speed, Shu Xian was suddenly thrust back into the days of being carried around. He was so mad he could spit. Don't move, Xuanmin said in his recent saltier tone. He stepped into the room. Shu Zhang's eyes widened. What? Xuanmin didn't answer. The chair got stuck outside the door and couldn't come in, Lu Nianqi interjected. Shu Xian let out a cold laugh and imagined all the ways he could threaten the two of them for teasing him. Before he could say anything, though, he noticed something was off. Xuanmin was blazing hot, even hotter than he had been last night. Yet his palms were as cool as always, and despite the heat, he wasn't sweating at all. His abnormal body temperature was clearly due to Shu Xian's dragon saliva. Feeling a pang of guilt, Shu Xian became more subdued. However, if Xuanmin's condition was caused by the dragon saliva, why was it presenting so differently from the night before? If Xuanmin hadn't been carrying Shu Xian, he wouldn't have noticed anything unusual. The only possibility was that Xuanmin had used some method to suppress the effects, keeping all the influence contained within his body so that others wouldn't notice a thing. No wonder his tone had been off all day. Never mind saltiness. If Shu Xian were that uncomfortable, he'd bury anyone who'd annoyed him in a mountain of salt. Whatever else you whatever else you can say about Shitu Zhang, he is thorough. Yes. Now completely subdued, Shu Xian obediently let Xuan Min carry him down the bamboo stairs to the first floor. As Shi Zhang had said, the room was sparsely furnished, with only books and a desk. No chairs. Once Xuanmin entered the room, he set Shu Xian down on the desk and turned to leave. The oil lamp on the desk was lit. Shi Zhang had turned it on when they first entered. The yellowish light illuminated the small room, but there was no obvious place to hide anyone. Is he behind the bookshelf? Shi Zhang and Lunian Qi didn't bother flipping through the books again. They skipped the bookshelf and began feeling along the bamboo walls, looking for hidden mechanisms or secret rooms. Meanwhile, Xuanmin, while re-examining the bookshelf, casually pulled out a book and flipped through it. But as soon as he did, his hand froze. The book he had randomly picked contained some annotations, and the handwriting in it was unmistakable. The writing was lean and forceful, with distinctive connections between certain strokes that few could imitate. Xuan Min could tell at a glance the exact pressure that had gone into each curving stroke. It was his own handwriting. Anyone who suddenly saw their own handwriting in a completely unfamiliar place would be shocked. The faint-hearted might even find it eerie. Not a pleasant feeling in any case. If this had been some ordinary place, it might not have been so bad. But this bamboo building was full of mysteries and ill omens. Few people would choose to live in a place surrounded by poisonous fog. Finding traces of himself here was deeply unnerving. Fortunately, the book itself was fairly mundane, just a handwritten travelogue by an unknown author. The annotated passage was simple and described how the traveler had stumbled into a corpse shop in Langzhou to escape the rain and encountered a corpse driver by coincidence. He woke up in a corpse shop with no memory. Connections? I think so. The annotation was even simpler, just 4 words. Langshou Xia Mountain. It was less of an annotation and more of a label. I was about to say, coincidence? I think not! Xuanmin frowned, staring at the 4-character annotation for a long time. It wasn't until Shu Xian called out to him that he snapped out of his thoughts. The latter had been keeping an eye on Xuan Min while directing Shitu Zhang and Lunian Qi. Seeing him frozen there with the book, he had to ask, Bald Donkey, why have you been standing there motionless for so long? Did you find something? 78 donkeys. From his angle, Shu Xian could only see Xuanmin's profile. The dim oil lamp cast deep shadows under his brow, accentuating the contours of his eye sockets and a nose bridge. This also made his expression appear unusually solemn, as if he had seen a ghost. It was an odd look on Xuanmin, and it felt like a waste not to see it closer. Shu Xian called out to Xuanmin a couple more times. Xuanmin's gaze remained fixed on the page as he shook his head without looking up. It's nothing. It was a reflexive dismissal. When Xuanmin glanced at Shu Xian, he paused in the middle of reaching for another book. In the end, he put the book down and walked over to the desk. Xuanmin had a unique aura, especially when he was doing something on his own. It was like the world had nothing to do with him, no matter how many people came and went around him. A sense of detachment and solitude, as if he existed in his own world. This solitude wasn't melancholic or wistful. It was distant and cold. Such a monk seemed more suited to standing alone in an ancient snow-covered Zen temple, with a bronze and ebony pagoda behind him and the temple's heavy gates in front. Beyond its gates, the world bustled with worldly affairs. Within it, the monk stood amid the clouds and snow. So when Xuanmin dismissed him, Xu thought it was as much as he expected, even though it left him somewhat uneasy. And then, when Xuanmin looked up, changed his mind, and walked over, it was as if the temple gates had opened from within. The simple sequence of events pleased Xu for a reason he couldn't name. His good mood didn't last long. Xuanmin handed the book to Xu and pointed to the annotated passage on the open page. Xu examined the marked section and the annotations beside it, but saw nothing worth investigating even after reading it twice. Is there something wrong with the annotations? Okay, so what is it? To Xu surprise, Xuanmin calmly said, "The handwriting is mine." For a moment, Xu heart skipped a beat, and his emotions grew troubled. On one hand, Xuanmin's unreserved attitude thrilled Xu. On the other hand, why would something linked to Xuanmin appear out of nowhere? The person he was pursuing was likely linked to the one who had extracted his bones. In this vast world, with countless places to hide, that person had chosen this obscure, fog-shrouded location. In the very same room, traces of Xuanmin had appeared. For a moment, Xu stared at the handwriting on the page, his mind blank. His heart felt as if it had plunged into an icy river, sending a chill through his entire body. That settled it. Xu silently exhaled, and the words on the page became clear again. So what if you wrote it? Are you showing off your calligraphy skills? Xu scoffed. He flipped through a couple more pages. He said this purely to mask the suspicion that had arisen in him. Although he had quickly dismissed it, no one appreciated being suspected. Regardless of small matters, Xu didn't want Xuanmin to feel any sort of rift forming between them. That's progress for Xu. He slapped the book down in front of Xuanmin. Compared to mine, it's still lacking. He gestured with his other hand, indicating a significant gap. By this much. Zhang, who overheard this while searching the corners of the room, realized that there really were people in this world with no sense of shame. Truly astonishing. Even more shamelessly, the two most capable members of the party were lounging around while he, a middle-aged man, practically elderly, and a half-blind person were left to search for clues in the room. To whom could he even complain about this? Xuanmin had been prepared for some kind of reaction from Xu after revealing the book's secret to him, but he had never expected Xu to respond like this. His calm gaze didn't waver, but he stared at Xu for a long time. Xu just sneered. What can you deduce from one book? Call out and see if the room answers you. Oh, it's going to answer him. What do you want to bet it's going to answer him? Seeing that Xu was getting more and more unreasonable, Xuanmin averted his eyes and decided not to engage further. Just as he was about to turn back to the bookshelf to pull out a few more books, something did answer. Called it! A series of chaotic flapping sounds came from outside. They drew closer until a midnight black bird flew into the room. Everyone was startled. Xu almost summoned a gust of wind to blow the thing away, but on a second look, he realized it was just a bird that was black all over. The room they were in spanned 2 floors, so its ceiling was quite high. A bird that flew in wouldn't immediately collide with anyone. Is that the bird from the forest? Zhang asked as soon as he saw the black bird. It seemed like the one that had almost led them astray. With his exceptional eyesight, Shushan had sussed out the bird's appearance as it flew in under the lamp's light. Yes, it's the same one, he said with a nod. But why did it come in? At that point, the bird's actions shocked everyone in the room. It circled near the high ceiling twice as to slow its descent and landed on Schwanman's shoulder. It rubbed its downy face against Schwanman's cheek and chirped a soft yang. Shitu Zhang had no words. Lunian Shi, however, coldly remarked, "Crows don't sound like that." Xu Xian was probably the most speechless. He was eating crow for should call out and see if the room answers, and thus stupid, but it had also made such an odd sound. It even had the nerve to land on the bald donkey's shoulder and rub it against his face, flapping its wings so hard that it sent feathers flying into Shushian's mouth. Really, what nonsense is this? 79. We're almost at 80. Shitu Zhang was unable to make sense of the situation. Oh, what's going on? Shushan eyed the stupid bird and snorted. Isn't it obvious? This bird recognizes the bald donkey. 80! Woo! 80. So, Shitu Zhang murmured, so this house probably belongs to the monk, Lunian Shi said. If Lunian Shi and the others had seen the book Xuanmin was holding, they wouldn't have had any doubt. This is your house, Xu Xian said, looking into Xuanmin's eyes. Xuanmin glanced at the black bird on his shoulder. He usually disliked people or things getting too close to him, but when the bird rubbed against him, he felt a strange sense of familiarity, as if he knew the sensation from a past life. He felt no disgust. In his heart, he had already concluded this house was his. Xu Xian stared into Xuanmin's eyes, and Xuanmin looked back without flinching. He acknowledged his statement with a calm, and he didn't look away, continuing to gaze quietly at Xu Xian. Whether it was an illusion or not, his eyes seemed heavy under. Hello, I'm back. Okay. You want all of Xuanmin's attention for him only. Yeah, and we're back. Yeah. I know I could have waited and it was probably going to be fine, but I wanted to reset it so there was no issue whatsoever. But yeah. I'll go back a little just in case. Xu Xian stared into Xuanmin's eyes, and Xuanmin looked back without flinching. He acknowledged his statement with a calm and he didn't look away, continuing to gaze quietly at Xu Xian. Whether it was an illusion or not, his eyes seemed heavy under the flickering light of the oil lamp, making Xu Xian feel as though Xuanmin cared about his reaction. Xu Xian averted his eyes. That really is a stupid bird. The black bird spread its wings and let out a cry, then pecked at him. It even understands human speech. It really must be a spirit, Xu Xian said in a sour voice. When you call out to the bald donkey, it's all soft and cooing, but when it comes to me, it's so harsh. Is that right? I think you don't want those shiny, smooth feathers of yours anymore. 81. This evil spirit, who'd lived for who knows how many centuries, still had the nerve to pick fights with a bird. He actually reached out to pluck the bird's tail feathers. The bird, unwilling to put up with him, let out a few harsh cries and flapped to Xuanmin's other shoulder, putting some distance between itself and Xuanmin. And Xuxian, not Xuanmin. He's sitting on Xuxian. Xuxian. He's sitting on Xuanmin. He's going away from Xuxian. There we go. Shu Xian stopped smiling and returned his attention to Xuan Min. If this house is yours, then so be it. You're not the one who extracted my bones, I'm certain of that. But you might still have some link to that person. I hope you were enemies, not allies. Shu Xian's expression was cold as he spoke, and Xuan Min matched him. The atmosphere was so tense that Shi Zhang didn't dare to breathe too loud in his corner, and even Lu Nianqi, who usually ignored others, felt uncomfortable. Shu Xian stared into Xuan Min's eyes, not missing a single flicker of emotion. If he wasn't mistaken, when he said the last sentence, Xuan Min's expression had briefly changed. The change was subtle and hard to discern, but at least it wasn't indifference. After traveling together for so long, if Xuan Min remained completely unmoved by the idea of being his enemy, it might have been time to part ways. Shu Xian felt a vague sense of unease. Nothing was wrong, yet something still felt missing. But now wasn't the time to dig deeper. He put away his half-serious, half-mocking expression and returned to his usual lazy demeanor. With that face that looks like it finds everything filthy, I doubt you would ever ally with anyone, he said. The other party would probably be driven to madness. Stop brooding and check the corners and cracks. Since this is your house, your intuition should be sharper than anyone else's. Speak! Where's the secret? He theatrically slapped the desk, fully playing the role of an interrogating jailer. The ability to change one's mood faster than flipping the pages of a book was something ordinary people couldn't understand, or couldn't handle. Xuan Min wasn't ordinary, and he still found himself somewhat flummoxed. Shocked, confused, surprised, exasperated, all kind of a mix of it. Mostly shocked. He remained silent for a moment, until the spirit bird rubbed against his face again, let out a rough cry in Shu Xian's direction, and flew to a corner of the ceiling. It flapped its wings in the direction of a protruding bamboo joint. With a sudden click, the ground beneath their feet shook and began to sink straight down. There was another world beneath this room. All right, got one last chapter. Oh, and we have a picture coming. Nice. Oh my gosh, I cannot drink tea properly, apparently. I'm so sorry. I'm a mess. All right. 231. Okay. Good night, Annika. All right. Enjoy. Good luck at work tomorrow. And I hope you like the rest of it when you have a chance to listen. It'll be about 2:30. If you just want to write that down, you'll know where to restart. But yeah. All right. Chapter 27, The Life-Sharing Spider. Shu Xian's hearing was extraordinary. As soon as they reached the bottom and the mechanism stopped, he heard faint breathing in a distant corner. That's creepy. However, the breathing was strange. So light, it seemed on the verge of stopping, though it was steady and rhythmic. The breaths, light and slow, gasped 3 times before they ceased, leaving no further trace. Again, that's pretty creepy. Shu Xian frowned and pointed toward the corner. That might be the person we're looking for. Why did the sound suddenly stop? Could they be dead? Shu Xian's unlucky 2-wheeled cart was still outside the bamboo house, so he couldn't freely move at the moment. He could only sit on the table and watch as Xuan Min walked straight toward the direction Shu Xian had pointed. The oil lamp on the table had dimmed significantly since they sank into the underground, leaving only a tiny weak flame that seemed like it might go out at any moment. It could not penetrate the deep darkness of the underground, but the faint light revealed that they were in a square stone chamber, about as wide as the room above. However, the small flame couldn't illuminate the far end of the room, so it was impossible to tell the full extent of the chamber's size. Schwanman's figure disappeared into the darkness beyond the light. He walked in silence as if he had been swallowed by shadows and left no trace. Shushian's heart tightened. It wasn't panic, after all. He had rarely experienced such emotion in his life. It was more like he sensed something strange. Suddenly, the sound of a mechanism rang out overhead again with a loud hum. Shushian's brow twitched. He whipped his head up in time to see a huge black shadow stretch across the empty space above. With a click, it sealed tightly and became the floor of the room above and the ceiling of this underground stone chamber. If Xuanmin hadn't lost his memory, Shushian would have wanted to ask, "Did you build this damn house just to mess with people? The exit is sealed before we could get out. What kind of joke is this?" If it weren't for the fact that this place belonged to Xuanmin, he would have already lifted the newly sealed ceiling. However, Shushian had been through a lot in his life. A single sealed ceiling, while annoying, wasn't that big of a deal. Let it be sealed. Once they caught the person they were after, they could figure out how to lift the roof with minimal fuss. So he looked away back into the darkness ahead. In that instant, he sensed that something else had gone awry. Something was missing. Yes, it was too quiet. Even Shitu Zhang's insistent chatter had stopped. No, wait. Where was Shitu Zhang? Shushian's brow furrowed as he scanned the area. There was no sign of any living creature within the reach of the light, let alone Shitu Zhang and Lunian Qi. "Bald donkey!" Shushian called into the darkness ahead. "Shitu Zhang and Lunian Qi are gone." 82. For a moment, he even suspected that Xuanmin had disappeared as well. Fortunately, Xuanmin's calm voice came from the dark corner, though his words were anything but calming. "The person here is also gone. The person hiding here is also gone." Shushian's scowl deepened. "You didn't find them?" Xuanmin emerged from the darkness, dressed in white. He walked back to the table, picked up the oil lamp, and headed toward the corner where Shushian had heard the breathing. "Yep, I marked it. 82. Thank you, though, Esper Lady." The flame of the oil lamp was indeed very weak. As Xuanmin walked, it gradually illuminated the path ahead. The light was minimal, only forming a circle at Xuanmin's feet, as if his robes were brushing it into existence. Meanwhile, the area where Shushian was seated grew darker and darker until they became pitch black. Just out of curiosity, Esper Lady, is your friend also listening? In the near total darkness, Shushian saw Xuanmin stop. His hand holding the oil lamp moved back and forth, lighting the area, the end of the stone chamber. Aw. All right. Well, I'm glad that you stayed. Under Xuanmin's deliberate movements, both corners were clearly visible. Indeed, there was no one there. I'm glad. I hope they enjoyed. Shushian's hearing had never failed him before. He was certain that the breathing he'd heard earlier was definitely from this spot, no mistake about it. Moreover, based on the sound he'd heard, it had been someone on the verge of death, much like the flickering flame on the brink of extinguishment within Xuanmin's grasp. Could such a person really have slipped away under his and Xuanmin's watch? Just a moment ago, Shushian had been unsure of their situation. The ground had sunk too quickly, and his attention had been completely drawn to the breathing he'd heard, so he hadn't paid attention to Shitu Zhang and Lunian Qi. He had even wondered if the two hadn't followed them down and were still outside. "Hi, Cookie-licious." We're on the last chapter for tonight. Um, we had some almost crossing paths between the what is their official name? Basically, the acolytes of Xuanmin, who we're almost positive is the state preceptor at this point. Like it's pretty much been stated he's the state preceptor. The grand diviner and the grand ritualist are right near the town. They're also looking for someone. They go through this poisonous fog in a basin mountain. And they almost crossed paths. They were both examining this bamboo building. The other people left. Xuanmin and their group came. And of course, Shushian, being extra, cleared the poisonous fog. They discovered that this place is actually Xuanmin's. And now they're in a hidden room. There was breathing. They thought they found someone. Now it's just Xuanmin and Shushian. I don't trust state preceptors. But yeah. Definitely watch the beginning of the stream when you have a chance. There was a lot of definitely watch the beginning of the stream when you have a chance. There was a lot of kind of lore drop this time. But you can still listen in now. It's still going to be nice time. But yes. Okay. Now, even the hidden person was also missing. If he didn't realize something was wrong by this point, then his head was only good for making him taller. Oh, so you're leaving? Okay. If you're leaving, bye, Cookielicious. If you're staying, welcome. But yes. Someone's playing tricks to avoid trouble, Shushian said, tilting his chin in Xuanmin's direction. Have you checked that area carefully? Any clues? Okay. Things sure were inconvenient without his wheelchair. He had to rely on others, and although he never doubted Xuanmin's abilities, sitting in the dark waiting for someone else to draw conclusions was frustrating. Shushian was not one to sit still. Without thinking, he flicked his sleeve at the edge of the table he was sitting on, and the entire wooden table hoisted into the air. Seconds later, Shushian, along with the table, landed beside Xuanmin with a heavy clang. Despite the loud noise, Shushian remained seated. The wind from the table's movements lifted Xuanmin's sleeve and subsided as Shushian landed, returning the stone chambers to silence. And yes, it is a pretty good insult, Esper Lady. Xuanmin's lamp-lit face seemed surprised, but he said nothing. He examined the corner and the ground with the light, leaving out not even the smallest detail. Shushian pointed to a small spot in the corner, right against the seam of the wall. There's a drop of blood there. A drop of blood here. Xuanmin took a step closer, then seemed to remember something and turned to shine the light on the corresponding corner. There's one here, too. He gestured to Shushian to wait a moment, then strode to the other corner with the lamp. After a quick glance, he turned back to Shushian in the darkness. That person set up an array. So, when they couldn't escape, they started playing tricks. What kind of array is it? He wasn't as knowledgeable about arrays as Xuanmin, since he rarely needed to use them. He couldn't determine what kind of array it was, just based on a few drops of blood in their positions. That was something for the Bolt Donkey to figure out. 83. It's not a dangerous array, just time-consuming, Xuanmin said. He returned with the lamp. In such a small stone chamber, it probably can't be too dangerous. But what did you mean by time-consuming? Shushian didn't look happy. This array is called the 9 linking rings. Xuanmin placed the lamp back on the table. There's no way to break it. What do you mean, no way to break it? Are we just stuck here? Ordinary arrays have gates. Although the 8 gates are ever changing, you can escape the array if you find the right one, Xuan Min explained. But the 9 linking rings has no gates, and it doesn't depend on the trapped person's abilities. This array is often used to escape dangerous situations. It lasts for an hour, after which it collapses on its own. Shushian was almost amused. If we wait an hour to get out, the duck we're after will have flown away. He didn't have the patience to waste an hour in this damned place. As he chuckled coldly, he raised his hand. Wait! Seeing the dragon's expression, Xuanmin frowned and tried to stop him. Too late. In the small stone chamber, several purple-white lights flashed, each with immense power, and struck the walls of the chamber. The collision of the white light and the walls created deafening explosions, one after another. Clearly, Shushian was angry. Since the array had no gates, he planned to force his way out, blasting through until he created an opening. However, the 9 linked rings was a sinister array. The lightning bolts that shot around the chamber not only failed to create any openings, but also ignited fire. Crimson flames rolled over every spot struck by the lightning, and in a flash the walls were covered in towering flames. The flames were long enough to almost lick at his and Xuanmin's robes. Great, we're trapped in a box, and now the box is on fire. That sounds like so much fun. This wasn't the most annoying part. Oh, really? The worst was the heat rising from the flames on the walls. It quickly filled the entire stone chamber. If this continued, it would turn into an oven. And that is why patience is a good thing. Exactly, Truffle. For a moment, Shushian felt as if he had returned to the golden marble to roll around in the heat near Xuanmin's hip. A dragon like him, who often traveled with clouds and thunder, ascending to the heavens and diving into the seas, preferred coolness and water. He hated the kind of heat that made people sweat rivers. The table Shushian was sitting on shook a little as someone leaned against it. Amid the heat, he turned his head and saw Xuanmin frowning with his eyes closed. One of his hands rested on the edge of the table. Oh no. The effects of the dragon saliva hadn't worn off yet. Xuanmin had been suppressing a body full of fire already. Now, with the external flames, it wasn't just unbearable. It could lead to the suspension of his true essence or even a chi deviation. Shushian instantly drew back his hand. The lightning bolts disappeared and the flames on the walls subsided. Eventually, not even a trace of scorch marks remained on the walls. It was like nothing had happened. But of course, that wasn't the case. The flames were gone, but the heat still steamed around them. To make matters worse, the flickering flame of the oil lamp reached its end and went out with a hiss. The stone chamber plunged into complete darkness. In extreme darkness, in the complete silence, the slightest sound was amplified. With his keen senses, Shushian found it particularly unbearable. Xuanmin's breathing was terribly clear in the darkness. The echoes bounced off the walls, then they pressed against Shushian's ears like they intended to bury him alive. The heat made Shushian's mind go blank, and his reaction slowed. He couldn't withstand the continuous waves of heat and heavy breathing. He felt a layer of sweat form on his body, and his thin clothes started sticking to his skin. His temper rose. What's going on? The 9 linked rings is true to its name. Xuanmin's low voice resonated in Shushian's ears. Each time you try to break the array, the burden on the trapped person increases. It can stack up to 9 layers. In his muddled mind, Shushian thought that just 1 layer was already unbearable. If it stacked to 9, he and Xuan Min would be cooked. He bit his tongue, keeping his belly aching about why it had to be fire and not water to himself. He was worried about Xuan Min's condition. From the sound of his voice, he was in bad shape. They needed to find a way out. At the very least, I need to help the bald donkey recover a bit. 84. Shushian thought this through his confusion, but what could he do? The array couldn't be forced apart, and he didn't have any pills or tools that could help. Wait. Something came through the fog in his mind. Since he was a true dragon, his entire body was a treasure. Anything he discarded was a priceless artifact to mortals. Unfortunately, he couldn't easily remove his dragon scales or horns in such a cramped space. If he transformed into his dragon form... Why does it smell like something's burning? Are you burning? Is something burning? Alright, we're gonna just put that out. Okay. I think it was that. Okay. Speaking of burning, let's make sure my room doesn't start burning. Alright, I'll have to find that when I'm done. Anything was a priceless artifact to mortals. Unfortunately, he couldn't easily remove his dragon scales or horns in such a cramped space. If he transformed into his dragon form, Xuan Min would probably suffocate from the lack of space. Besides, even if he extracted those parts, they couldn't be directly consumed. They had to be ground into powder and made into medicine. Too troublesome. Other than dragon scales and horns, the only thing that could be used to save someone were dragon saliva and dragon blood. Right, there was still blood. With the lesson from the dragon saliva fresh in his mind, Shushian didn't act recklessly this time. He raised his sweaty hand, groped around in the dark, and patted Xuan Min when he found him. Dragon blood. Would dragon blood have any negative effects? There was a moment of silence. No, Xuan Min replied. Then it's settled. I'll get some for you. Shushian had just exhaled a heavy, hot breath and was wondering where to make a cut when he heard Xuan Min give his own labored breath. Really? For a moment, Shushian was stunned. Before his heat-addled brain could process it, he felt Xuan Min's fingers grasp his chin. Without meaning to, Shushian moved his head in the direction of the finger's pressure, and something pressed against the side of his neck. Shushian's breath hitched. His hand at his side twitched, but didn't rise. It only gripped the edge of the table tighter. Something seemed on the verge of happening, and another strange feeling mushroomed in his muddled mind, but it never found an outlet. The sensation on his neck was so vivid it almost overshadowed everything else. Something was lightly pressing against his skin. With just a bit more force, in the blink of an eye, it would pierce through and press in. Yeah, I agree. Ooh! Wait. Abruptly, Shushian realized what was strange. Given Xuan Min's extremely disciplined nature, even in such a situation, he would only tell Shushian to stay away. He wouldn't agree to drink dragon blood so easily, and certainly wouldn't choose to drink from the neck. The smoke haze cleared from Shushian's mind. His expression turned cold. With one hand, he swept the person in front of him away. He was naturally strong, and his sudden bursts of strength were often uncontrollable. If he shoved anyone aside, they would be smashed into the opposite wall and shatter it. Yet there was no dull thud of a body hitting anything. Instead, the room filled with the sound of something like beads falling to the ground. Here, I got this. Tap, tap. At that sound, everything around them dispersed like mist. The unbearable heat and the pitch black darkness were all driven away. Shushan calmly scanned his surroundings. He was still sitting on the table, and the ceiling above was still open. The oil lamp on the table was still lit, and Xuan Min was beside him with his eyes closed and his hands hanging by his sides. As for the missing persons, Shitu Zhang and Lunian Qi, they were lying on the ground, unconscious. Ooh! He'd seen this before. They were trapped in some array and had yet to break free. Ooh! Hot. Literally, he was boiling. They're both sweating. Yeah, you tuned in just in time, Cookielicious. Definitely scandalous. We are eating good tonight. I agree, Ember. He had seen this before. They were trapped in some array and had yet to break free. Oh no, I already read that. First, tell me about the sinister array you set up. No. I missed that. Shushian chuckled coldly and turned to grab at the dark corner. Immediately, a heavy object was dragged across the ground to rest in front of him. It was a person. A man, slumped on the ground, dust-covered and disheveled, who reeked of blood. First, tell me about the sinister array you set up, Shushian said. He swiped 2 fingers up, and the man's chin lifted like someone was squeezing him by the throat. Answer me. Have you touched the dragon bones? After your answer, I'll give you a chance to bargain. You can pick how you'd prefer to die. The man's mouth frothed with blood, but even so, he managed a ragged smile. What a pity, he said hoarsely. Just a little longer, and it would have been done. But no matter. There are still 3 more. Shushian's expression turned frigid, and he raised his hand. You can't help them. The inner demons, they have to break free on their own. If even one is a little late. The man paused meaningfully, then let out a low laugh. Ha 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 ha. As he laughed, he choked on more blood and coughed so hard his whole body curled up. Inner demons. Shushian frowned. He had heard of arrays that used inner demons to trap people. In fact, such arrays were often used in life-threatening situations, either when facing opponents far stronger than oneself or when surrounded by too many enemies. These arrays could buy some time to escape. They were also some of the few ways to defeat stronger opponents when outnumbered. After all, everyone had inner demons, desires, confusions, or at least some lingering thoughts, big or small, near or far. Some were convoluted and hidden deep in oneself, but the array could draw them out and amplify them until they disturbed the mud. Shushian felt his brow pulse upon hearing the word inner demon. What haunted him wasn't the moment his tendons were ripped out on the coast of Huameng in Guangdong, nor was it the desire to make the person who did it pay in blood. What the illusion had conjured clearly was not linked to either of those things. He couldn't have been ensnared by the array just because he wanted to escape the stone chamber. If it wasn't because of those things, then it could only have been because of a person. And the only one in the illusion with him was Xuan Min. This was also why Lunian Qi and Shitu Zhang had mysteriously disappeared. Xuan Min is Shushian's inner demon. Right? He was the inner demon the array had drawn out. Perhaps the inner demon hadn't been so strong, or perhaps the flaw had been too obvious to him, so he had managed to break free. Shushian's expression changed several times before it settled into an icy calm. He tossed the dying man to the ground and wiped the blood stains from his hands. The man was truly on the verge of death, but for whatever reason, he still clung to a sliver of hope. Although his eyes were unfocused, they held a trace of malevolence. "What are you plotting?" Shushian asked, remembering the man's earlier rambling. "If you confess now, I might let you live another hour. It won't take much effort for me to figure it out, but if you insist on being stubborn, I'll have to do it myself. Then you won't even get an hour." It's a heck of a way to realize your feelings, isn't it? The man on the ground coughed violently. Each breath sounded like it might be his last. Shushian wondered if the man could still hear. Either way, he showed no intention of responding. He might have simply lacked the strength. Shushian wasn't surprised. He mentally unraveled the threads, trying to figure out what this man on the brink of death had clung to as he made his last stand. What would a dying person desire most? Nothing more than someone to save them or a way to escape. The former was unlikely in this situation. Even if someone came for him, they would have to get past Shushian first. With the delay, the man on the ground would die before leaving the room. The latter was a fantasy. If being rescued was no guarantee that he would survive, could he escape on his own? He was bound to die with things the way they were. How would he find his way out? Unless he had found some method to make his life last a little longer. Shushian's expression darkened. It seemed this man really was plotting to extend his life. All right, pause. We also did talk about the giant life-extending array that we found on Fentu Island. Could this be our man that arranged all of that? That seems to me like something highly plausible. Just saying, just putting it out there. Everyone had their own fate. If you brought yourself to the brink of death, you couldn't just tack on an additional stretch of life. So-called life extension usually came in two forms: exchanging lives or binding lives. The first involved using various methods to swap someone else's life for one's own. Ultimately, one lived and one died. The second involved binding one's life to someone else's, so the two lived and died together. Yes, it is very sus, Ember, I agree. The first seemed more sinister, while the second seemed harmless. In reality, the second was dangerous, just less direct. The former traded lifespan for lifespan, while the latter traded fortune and blessing for lifespan. One divided lifespan, while the other divided fortune and blessings. It could also transfer misfortune, and there might have been other harms as well. In the end, the two methods were equally bad. Since this man was plotting to extend his life, there must have been someone whose life he intended to exchange with or bind. This matched the nonsense the bastard had been spouting earlier. No matter, there are still 3 more. Shushian felt a dark cloud looming over his head. He was not one to owe favors. This trait has its pros and cons. The good was that he had lived for so many years without any debts. He'd never owed anyone anything for long or gotten entangled with them. The bad was that without connections or interactions, he had no close relationships. This might have been a disadvantage for ordinary people, but to Shushian it seemed the most comfortable way to live. Still, regardless of whether they were close or not, Lu Nianqi and Shitu Zhang were people Shushian had brought along with him. In times like these, they could be considered his people, not to mention Xuan Min. I love that Xuan Min is his own category. Like, he's like Shushian, Ludian Shi, like, yeah, you did my people. But Xuan Min, he's a whole different category. To plot against his people right in front of him, this person really had a death wish. Shushian's eyes flickered as he recalled the sounds he'd heard the moment he'd broken free from the inner demon. It was a sound like lightweight beads, lighter than gold or agate beads, and not as crisp, falling to the ground. Shushian suspected that was the key to the life extension. Time was running out, and he didn't have the patience to wait for the scoundrel to come to his senses and explain what he'd meant. Shushian remembered what Shi Tuzhang had said earlier. This person had taken him to a mountain and watched him carve 7 stone locks and 2 tomb guardian beasts. Let me ask you, do you know about Fentu Island in the middle of the river in Wulong County? There's a tomb chamber beneath it where over 300 restless souls were trapped, Shushian said coldly, grabbing the man again. Do you think those trapped souls would recognize you if they saw you? For Shushian Xuanmin is his person, maybe, right? The coughing man hunched in on himself, as if he still feared the consequences of his own misdeeds, even in his near-death state. He gasped heavily a few times, like the memory was fighting him, and barely croaked out, "I." "Now you want to talk?" "Sorry, I've lost my patience," Shushian interrupted. He cocked his head to one side. "Just wanted to confirm how to make you suffer." I think Lunianchi and Zhang are kind of his pets, but Xuan Min is his person. I could see that. Yeah. With that, he flipped his hand, and a set of iron tags with names carved into them appeared in his palm. The resentment of these trapped souls runs deep. Even if their remains were properly buried, it would take at least a decade for their grievances to dissipate, especially when they see their enemy. He lowered his voice and flicked his finger in the air. A red mark appeared on the dying man's forehead. He suddenly grew alert, as if he had been revived by a miracle. Suffering should be endured while awake, Shushian said. He scattered the iron tags onto the man. The tags were thin and no larger than a thumb, and there was no more than 20 or 30. They could easily have been brushed off, yet the man seemed crushed under the weight of a mountain. His body turned stiff and pressed against the ground. He was unable to move, no matter how much he struggled. Then, as if he had seen something terrible, the man's eyes widened. He let out a blood-curdling scream. "Ah! Go away! Don't come near me!" He screamed and screamed, his body writhing, as he cried and begged for mercy. It was a complete, unrestrained breakdown. "Please, I beg you, ask me anything! Go away! Take them away! Make them stop! Make them leave!" Perhaps the man's desperate cries were too piercing. Unianshi and Shi Tuzhang, who had been lying on the ground, both twitched and woke up with a start, as if they'd hit the ground in their dreams. Plop, plop. Something else fell to the ground twice in succession. Shi Tuzhang gasped for breath. His eyes were unfocused as he stared into the void. It took him a while to snap back to reality. What happened? What just happened? How did I fall asleep in a place like this? He looked at Lu Nianqi and saw that the aloof but reliable young man seemed to have just woken up as well. That made the situation even more bizarre. Hey, Xiao Qi, did you have a dream too? What did you see? Shi Tuzhang asked. Lu Nianqi's face was pale, and he looked utterly lost. After a long pause, he said in a rough voice, I saw Shiju, but it didn't quite feel like him. Oh, please, please! Before Lu Nianqi could finish his sentence, the man's frantic wails cut through the air again, scattering some of the lingering turmoil from the inner demons. What's wrong with him? Lu Nianqi asked Shushian, his voice full of suspicion. Shushian frowned and glanced at Chuan Min, who still showed no signs of movement, then back at the man on the ground. I'll give you a moment to catch your breath, he said. He flicked his fingers. Now tell me again, what exactly did you do? The agonizing pain of 100 ants gnawing at the man's body subsided. He gasped for breath, his face drenched in tears and snot. When he answered, it was in a weak, disjointed manner. I can't die. I can't. You use the life-sharing spider. The array. Shushian's eyes narrowed. The life-sharing spider. How do we break it? The array. If the array is broken, the spider dies. If the array remains unbroken. The man's unfocused eyes fixed on Xuanmin. Just a moment. Pierce the skin. While the man spoke, Xu Xian was already rummaging through Xuanmin's clothes, searching for something. Leave a blood mark then. Found it. Xu Xian found a faint red dot forming on Xuanmin's neck. Without hesitation, he pulled aside the collar and instinctively placed his lips to the mark, which resembled a bruise. Sucking won't help. Once it's inside, it can't be sucked out, the man said. He had regained some strength, perhaps due to the lingering effects of Shushian's earlier conjuration. He even managed to speak coherently now. In a state of manic clarity, the man stared at Xuanmin's neck, and Shushian, who was bent over it. His dull eyes flickered with a hint of madness. It's done. It's useless now. It's already done. As long as the blood mark sprouts spider legs, I'll live again. He sighed and studied his own hands, which seemed to have regained some vitality. Shushian lifted his head and wiped a trace of blood from his downturned mouth. The skin around the blood mark was red from his sucking, but the mark itself remained, just as the scoundrel had said. In fact, it seemed to be spreading, as if the spider legs were beginning to emerge. Just as a thin red line began to extend from the blood mark, Shushian froze. It looked familiar. He glanced at the red mole at the junction of Xuanmin's neck and jaw. Every time Xuanmin fell into a state of confusion, that mole would sprout several blood vessels, exactly like the life-sharing spider. The new blood mole on Xuanmin's neck abruptly stopped after extending 2 blood vessels. It began to retreat, and eventually the mole itself disappeared. Before Shushian could understand what had happened, he felt Xuanmin stir. He watched as Xuanmin slowly opened his eyes and shifted to look at him. Awake? Shushian asked. For a second, Xuanmin raised his hand just an inch. We were tricked. We fell prey to an inner demon, Shushian continued. His expression was complex as he recalled what he'd seen earlier. He didn't notice Xuanmin's raised hand drop back down. The monk closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he opened them again, he was fully awake. He looked intently at Shushian. Shushian suddenly realized how compromising his position looked. The mark he'd left by sucking on Xuanmin's neck was still vivid on his skin. No, let me explain. But the damned life-sharing spider had already vanished without a trace. Without evidence, what was there to explain? Whether Shushian managed to explain himself or not, Xuanmin was not the kind of person to react too strongly. He might even turn his face away to spare Shushian some embarrassment and pretend nothing had happened. As for what Xuanmin was really thinking, that was beyond Shushian's control. Could make little difference. Besides, Xuanmin had already paraded around in the inner dimension, or had already paraded around in the inner demon. What was there to explain? So what if he left a mark? It wasn't like he could take it back now. Shushian's expression shifted through a myriad of emotions before he finally gave up and sat up straight, acting as if nothing had happened. He eyed Xuanmin as if accusing him of being the one at fault. Why are you even looking at me? Xuanmin's body temperature was scorching, making the coolness of his neck all the more noticeable. Even though he hadn't seen what had happened, he reached up and touched the offending spot. Before Shu Xian could see any change in Xuanmin's face, the dragon guiltily turned away, hardened his expression, and sneered at the man on the ground. Didn't you say it worked? How do you feel now? Because from where I'm sitting, you don't look like you're about to live. I'm alive. I'm really alive. I can live, the man babbled. Look, I can move my fingers now. As he spoke, he clenched his fists a few times. Indeed, he seemed to have regained some strength. Shushian's next word shattered his delusions. Stop showing off those chicken claws of yours. Did you really think that strength came from the life-sharing spider? Shushian smirked crookedly. I just needed you to stay conscious a little longer so you could suffer. Look. He tugged lightly at Xuanmin's collar without turning his head. Your precious blood mark is gone, let alone any spider legs. You'd have better luck dreaming. Besides, if it had really worked, you wouldn't be the one lying on the ground, shaking right now. At first, the man seemed unwilling to believe it, but when he processed the last part, he had no choice but to accept the truth. If his plan had really worked, wouldn't the difference between him and Xuanmin have been more obvious? The man went limp on the ground, his eyes wide, completely broken. It seems your life-sharing spider can compare to a flick of my finger, Shushian said. His tone was glacier cold. The man's wailing cut off. After going through so much, he finally seemed to accept reality. He crawled over and grabbed Shushian's foot, which was dangling off the table. Save me! Please save me! I can't die! I shouldn't die! I was supposed to have merit! How can I die? Shushian was thoroughly disgusted by the man clinging to his foot, but his legs were numb. He couldn't pull away. Shushian turned to Xuanmin for help instead. Bald donkey, could you? Then he remembered his guilt and swallowed his words. He was prepared to resign himself to enduring the man's touch when Xuanmin moved. With a wave of his hand, the man clinging to Shushian's legs was tossed a full 10 feet away, and Shushian's legs were gently set back onto the table. Shushian blinked in shock, and I did not forget the donkey. We're at 85. Wait, I could have done that myself. Why did I freeze up at the critical moment? He blamed his temporary stupidity on the heat from the inner demon, which must have fried his brain. Now wasn't the time to dwell on that. There were more pressing matters. He leaned toward the man on the ground. What were you saying earlier? That you have merit? Have you asked those iron tags if they agree? You trapped 300 restless souls in a tomb, condemning them to eternal suffering, and you have the nerve to talk about merit. Your lordship doesn't understand. The man, desperate to live, suddenly switched to addressing Shushian as lordship. Whenever he could, which just made Shushian scowl. Your lordship really couldn't understand. Doesn't understand. The section of the river near Wulong County has always been treacherous, with hidden whirlpools and strong currents. If a major flood were to hit, both banks would be devastated, and countless lives would be lost. Next spring and summer, Wulong County will face a once-in-a-century flood. I set up the flow of 100 soldiers to prevent that disaster. Did you? Did you really? The man looked up at Shushan and patted at his own chest as he spoke. Saving hundreds, thousands, even millions of lives. Isn't that an act of great merit? How could I deserve to die? I should live to save more people from suffering. How do I deserve death when useless people are still alive? The stone chamber fell silent. Schwanman's eyes flickered as if he had remembered something, but he composed himself quickly. He frowned at the man on the ground. Shushan remained expressionless for a moment before letting out a chilly laugh. Why do you deserve to die? Let me ask you this. Has the flood happened yet? Next spring and summer, the man repeated. He thought Shushan was questioning the accuracy of the prediction, so he kept defending it. The person who divined this disaster is a master. He's never been wrong before. There's no way he could miscalculate. Shushan cut him off impatiently. Even if it's true, I'm asking you, has the flood happened yet? Have lives been lost? Not yet. The man shook his head, trying to speak again. But people have already died, Shushan said, holding up 3 fingers. 300 people. The flood hasn't even arrived, but you've already claimed 300 souls. Not only did you deny them a peaceful life, but you also refused to let them rest in death. Did you ever even ask for their consent? Did they agree to be sacrificed for your so-called flow of 100 soldiers? There's always a price to pay for changing fate. 300 lives for millions. So it's a good deal, is that it? You treat human lives like commodities and weigh them on a scale. I understand, the man said, as if he still believed he had some conscience left. That's why I carefully selected beggars and disabled soldiers. Beggars spend their days on the streets, and they often die overnight from exposure. They're of little use compared to ordinary people. As for the disabled soldiers, they're already half dead, missing limbs, unable to work or make a living. They're just a burden. Shushan was almost amused by the man's audacity. You know, I think you're a burden too, he said. Look at you now, lying there like a piece of rotten meat and barely clinging to life. How about this? I'm planning to set up an array of my own, and I only need 1 life. How about I use yours? Maybe in 100 years I'll save millions of people. The man was speechless. Of course, Shushan wasn't bored enough to save anyone, nor was he compassionate enough to lay any souls to rest. He was doing all this because, in his mind, dying without remorse or understanding of one's wrongdoings was a form of release. For someone like this man, it was more fitting to be denied that and to die full of guilt and fear. But before that happened, there were still questions that needed to be answered. Let me ask you one more thing, Shushan said. Where did the dragon bone buried in your tomb come from? It was a gift from a master. The bone made the array more effective, the man said cautiously. Shushan's patience was wearing thin. I hate it when people beat around the bush. How about I send you to the underworld right now, huh? No, I'll talk. The master, he's a sorcerer. I've followed him for years. My blood is spiritually potent, far more effective for setting up arrays than ordinary methods. He taught me many things. I've been with him since I was 8 or 9, studying for over a decade. This dude's only like 19. I've been portraying him as an old man. He's really a master, though he forbade me from calling him that. He only gave me a peachwood waist pendant passed down among his disciples. Though I no longer follow him, we've stayed in contact. He warned me about the great flood coming to Wulong County's part of the river, and helped me set up the flow of 100 soldiers with his men. A sorcerer again. Shushan recalled the sorcerer mentioned by Scribe Liu. It seemed they were one and the same. Since the dragon bone had come from him, this sorcerer was almost certainly the man they sought. To set up your array, you kidnapped 300 orphaned souls. To carve statues, you bound people to desolate mountains. To amplify your schemes, you buried a dragon bone. You and your Shifu are cut from the same cloth. You're both vile to the core, Shushan jeered. What's your Shifu's name? Having sensed that Shushan's true target was his Shifu, the man tried to bargain. If you spare me a few more years. Before he could finish, Shushan waved his sleeve and slammed the man against the wall. Then don't speak! I'll find him anyway. Song Yun! The man gasped. His Taoist name is Song Yun! That was what he needed. Shushan moved to strike, but Xuanmin pressed a hand to his wrist. What? I have a question. No, I have questions, Xuanmin said coolly. He turned to the man. Have you seen me before? The question froze Shi Tuzhang, Lu Nianqi, and even Shushan. Weak and wobbly, the man squinted at Xuanmin. He shook his head. No. Xuanmin frowned. Then why flee? My master foresaw that I'd face a calamity. He told me to head this way for a chance at salvation. I heard birdsong from outside the fog-covered forest, so I took an antidote and crept in. A black bird saw me covered in blood and showed me the path. How did the bald donkey raise a bird that aids criminals? 86. Come on. Yet Shushan felt an odd relief at hearing this. At least Xuanmin and the man shared no past. Another matter came to Shushan. He eyed Xuanmin's neck. Where did you get the life-sharing spider? From your sorcerer Shifu? Yes, he said it came from Long Shao, the man admitted. He was unable to pinpoint Shushan's mood and was too afraid to beg further. Long Shao, Shushan repeated. He flipped through the book on the table with Xuanmin's annotations to find the words Long Shao's Mount Xia. This wasn't the first time he'd heard of this place. Earlier, when discussing Xuanmin's amnesia, back in the inn, the monk had mentioned walking in the mountains of Langshou. Had the pre-amnesia Xuanmin discovered the life-sharing spider's secrets and found a way to break the spell which had led him to Langshou? Ultimately, their trip had been well worth it. Their previous jumble of disjointed clues had lined itself up and become clear. Everything now pointed to one person, the sorcerer, and one place, Langshou. Having learned these two things, Shushan saw no reason to linger. He raised his hand and clenched his fist, leaving the resentful energy from the iron tags to engulf the man. The man screamed. Shushan watched impassively. With a curl of his finger, he drew a wisp of white smoke from the man's body. The spiritual energy he'd infused into the man to keep him conscious was no more. As the man wailed in agony, he sank back to the brink of death. Enveloped in resentment and feeling his end closing in, bit by bit, the man broke down. Connections. Tears streamed down his face as regret coursed through him. He didn't want to die. If it you, what would you do? The words were vague and fragmented, but Shushan understood. If it were you who were faced with a flood, what would you do? Defying fate always came at a cost. Shushan watched the man in silence. He almost deigned to answer, but then he decided that this person was fundamentally different from him. The man wouldn't understand no matter how Shushan explained. It would have been a waste of words. When the man's breath stilled at last, Shushan gathered the iron tags and turned to Xuan Min. "Have your bird flap us back up and out of here," Shushan demanded, extending his arms. It was a clear request to be carried, though from his tone, he sounded more like he was collecting a debt. Xuan Min stared back at Shushan. For some reason, the monk hesitated, though he eventually reached out and lifted Shushan off the table. Shushan didn't get it. Xuan Min usually acted like carrying him was no more than carrying a sack, so much so that he'd grown accustomed to it. Why the sudden hesitation? Had Xuan Min been affected by the inner demon? I didn't even think about that. The answer hit Shushan when he was back in Xuan Min's arms. The monk's body temperature was even higher than before, so hot that Shushan felt uncomfortable. Even the hand that had been cool earlier was now scalding. And why had this happened? Because when he nibbled on Xuan Min's neck, Xuan Min had come into contact with his dragon saliva once again. What a pain! A single dose of dragon saliva was potent enough for the average person, but for someone like Xuan Min, it wasn't too bad. It just required some basic restraint. However, the effects of a second dose were doubled, and the average person would probably be pushed beyond the brink. Even Xuan Min had been drenched in sweat at night the last time it had happened. And now a third round. Though Shushan couldn't fully empathize with what Xuan Min was going through, he imagined that it was probably beyond what most people could endure. Esper Lady, I literally have a page left. It might even be life-threatening. Xuan Min was still suppressing the effects of the dragon saliva within his body, but something was definitely going to blow. His body temperature alone was enough to burn someone to death. Well, we have to find a way to deal with this nuisance, since the dragon saliva is mine. Shushan's consciousness stirred as he wondered about a solution. He wasn't sure what to do, but whatever it was, it shouldn't be done in a crowded place. It was best to have no one around, as this wasn't something that was appropriate to discuss with others. Since this house is heavily linked to you, don't you plan to search it top to bottom for clues about your pet? He asked Xuan Min. Xuan Min had planned on doing so, so he made a low hum of agreement. Shushan nodded at Shi Zhang and Lu Nianqi. You two head back first, lest Jiang Xining and the others worry. The bald donkey and I will go through this little pagoda again. With his poor eyesight, Lu Nianqi made no objection, but Shi Zhang hesitated. He wanted to stay and help because this little pagoda wasn't exactly small. However, after some thought, he decided that these wise ones would have had their reasons, so he didn't press further. All right, we'll head back to the Fang residence first, he said with a nod. And then they were off. And yes, I think there was one more bald donkey, so 87. But yes, good night, everyone. Good night, Esper Lady. Oh my gosh, my pen. You will be here probably Thursday, but just a reminder to everyone or anyone that didn't join, this week is normal. We will be starting book 3 this Thursday. Next week is going to be weird. It's going to be a Monday, Tuesday week. So I will post about that just a little bit. I will have that new poll with the books that we chose for a series after this. So please go ahead and fill that out. But yes, good night or good morning. Yeah, sure. Shushan wants to help search the pagoda. But yeah, bye. I will see you all hopefully Thursday. To everyone who watched this video, I hope you enjoyed. And I will see you next time in book 3. Woo! Good night.